Okay, let's throw a portion back. It's Devarim and Ve'et Chanan. It's pretty much 7 chapters of the Torah. I'm not really sure whether or not it's a good idea to do these two together in the future. Kind of is, because it goes through Israel's history in Devarim up until when they're ready to go into the land. And Ve'et Chanan is about their future. And in that, you can see the history of Yehovah's people going back to Abraham and their future, what's promised to them. You can see the history, obviously, of Israel, which is what's covered. But we can see, good, okay, thanks. We can see our lives in it as well, from when they left Sinai to where they're up to. And the history of the first generation as well. We can see our walks being pictured in that. And then the future, obviously, we can see what future is promised to us. Ve'et Chanan is all written in the future perfect tense, and it's addressing 2 different groups of people, those who make it and those who don't, and it's speaking to them directly of you have done this and you have done that. So we can see our future in it as well. So it will be a 4-part Torah portion, just because it's 7 chapters long. In the first part, I'm going to cover... you see a lot of Israel encountering its enemies and overcoming its enemies with Yehovah. So I'm going to look at the idea of what it is to overcome. We know in Revelation a lot is promised to those who overcome. In the second part, I want to look at those who are overcome by evil, by the desires of their flesh. In the third part, I want to look at the first 2 of the 10 words. The second one being, have no other gods before me. And I want to look at that idea of what it is to have idols before Yehovah. And particularly something that I'm going to look at in the third part is smoking. Because we did a number of Torah portions when we had people here that were smoking to deal with that. We'd spoken to them directly, and we were dealing with that issue while they were here. But at that time, we had a number of questions, people saying, well, is smoking even forbidden by the scriptures? Is it even a problem? And I understand where that comes from, like the mental space that comes from with certain things like addictions, where you can say, well, give me a verse where it says you specifically cannot do that thing. So I want to cover why smoking and why various forms of addictions are bad and why they are forbidden by the scriptures. And in the last part, we'll look at the last of the 10 words, then what people call the Shema, and just the first few verses of chapter 7 up until the end. So it'll be 4 parts. It'll be fairly lengthy. But it covers a really good cross-section of scripture. It kind of, it's like the conclusion to loads of stuff that we've seen in scripture from Genesis up until now, loads of stuff that we've learnt this year in particular as well. So we begin in Deuteronomy 1 verse 1. These are the words which Moshe spoke to all Israel beyond the Jordan, in the wilderness, in the desert plain opposite Suf, between Paran and Tefel and Lavan and Chatzeroth and Di Zahav. 11 days' journey from Chorev by way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. So we're going to see 2 mountains mentioned in this Torah portion. We're going to see Mount Sinai, where obviously they learnt the Torah. We're going to see Mount Seir as well. And both of those mountains, they're told you've gone around these mountains long enough, it's time to move on. And both of those mountains have different significance. Obviously, Sinai, where you learn the Torah, and Seir, which is a dome, is Esav, and all of the characteristics associated with Esav as well. So we'll see that. But note this generation, second generation, they've been in the wilderness for 40 years, and they're only 11 days' journey from Mount Sinai to Kadesh Barnea, where they are. So they've not really come far. Verse 3 says, and it came to be in the 40th year, in the 11th Chodesh, on the first day of the Chodesh, that Moshe spoke to the children of Yisrael according to all that Yehovah had commanded him concerning them. After he had smitten Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, who dwelt at Ashtaroth in Edrei. Beyond the Ardain in the land of Moab, Moshe undertook to declare this Torah. And that's an interesting word that's used there. A couple of times in the English we're going to hear that Moshe declared the Torah to Israel. We know that the book of Deuteronomy comes from the two Greek words, deuteros meaning second, nomos meaning law. It's a second telling of the law, basically. But Moshe here is doing more than just telling them the law for the second time. He is ba'aring the Torah to them. Okay, so the word ba'ar means to make plain, to make distinct, to make clear. And it can be used to mean to engrave something in stone, to set it forth clearly before somebody. So what Moshe is actually doing at this point is he's making clear the Torah to them. And we're going to see that he goes through certain aspects of the Torah and makes them clear and distinct to them that he's not covered at other points. He gives details in this that were not given the first time that the Torah was recorded. Okay, this is Gesenius on Ba'ar, to engrave letters on a stone, to explain, to declare, properly to dig out the sense and to set it forth when dug out. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to explain the Torah to them. Moshe is, after all, remember, he is a Levite. So he's going to do exactly what we see the Levites doing in the rest of the scriptures. Yehovah our Elohim spoke to us in Chorev, saying, you have dwelt long enough at this mountain. Turn and set out on your way and go into the mountains of the Amorites and to all the neighboring places in the desert plain, in the mountains and in the low country and in the Negev and on the coast, to the land of the Canaanites and to the Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. So this is what we saw at the beginning of the book of Numbers. You've dwelt at Mount Sinai long enough. You've learnt the Torah for long enough. This is also what he says when they're at Mount Seir. Then they're told to turn. Okay, we know what turning is. It's to repent. So we can see for us, you've learnt what's required of you. Okay, turn and set out on your journey. See, I have set the land before you. Go in and possess the land which Yehovah swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, to give to them and to their seed after them. So this is the first generation. They're being told, you've dwelt long enough at Sinai, go and possess the land. Beginning of the book of Numbers. And I spoke to you at that time, saying, I am unable to bear you by myself. Yehovah your Elohim has increased you, and see, you are today as numerous as the stars of the heavens. Yehovah Elohim of your fathers is going to add to you 1,000 times more than you are, and bless you as he has spoken to you. How do I bear your pressure and your burden and your strife by myself? So this is actually Moshe giving us details that we don't get the first time that this event is described in the book of Numbers. After they've set out, he says, then I said, I'm unable to bear you myself. I spoke to you at that time saying, I'm unable to bear you myself. When this is recorded in Numbers 11, Numbers 1 through 10 is them setting out how they're going to set out, how the camp should depart, and how the trumpets are going to declare their departure. Numbers 11's right after they've been told set out. I am unable to bear all these people alone. So here he's speaking to Yehovah, because the burden is too heavy for me. And if you are doing this to me, please slay me altogether if I have found favor in your eyes, and let me not see my evil. Then Yehovah said to Moshe, gather to me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of meeting, and let them stand there with you. And I shall come down and speak with you there, and shall take of the Spirit that is on you and put on them. And they shall bear the burden of the people with you, so that you do not bear it yourself alone. So this is what Yehovah says. Go and get people whom you know to be elders of the people and officers over them. This is how Moshe records the event when he's ba'aring in Deuteronomy. He says, choose men wise and understanding, known to your tribes, and let me appoint them as your heads. Okay, so he said, I've said to you, I'm unable to bear you myself alone. He said it also to Yehovah, and then Yehovah says, go and get these people. Then he describes this event as he went to the people and said, you choose men wise, understanding, known to your tribes. And you answered me and said, the word which you have spoken to us to do is good. And I took the heads of your tribes, wise men and known, and made them heads over you, leaders of thousands, leaders of hundreds, and leaders of 50s, leaders of 10s, and officers for your tribes. So these people are distinct from the ones that Yehovah appointed, who were the leaders of thousands. They were the actual heads of the tribes, the ones that Yehovah picked for himself. And I commanded your judges at that time, saying, when hearing between your brothers, judge righteously between a man and his brother, or the stranger who is with him. Do not show partiality and justice. Hear the small as well as the great. Do not be afraid of anyone's face, for the justice belongs to Elohim. And the case which is too hard for you, bring it to me, and I shall hear it. So don't show partiality. Means, doesn't matter somebody's standing. Yehovah shows no respect to persons. It doesn't matter who somebody is. Justice is the same for one person as it is for another. And I commanded you at that time all the words which you should do. Okay, so when he's talking about here, chronologically in the Torah, is towards the beginning of the book of Numbers. And he said, I appointed judges for you at that time. However, that's not something we see recorded in the book of Numbers. The event which is similar to it, we see when Moshe ba'ars this law. So we don't see the law being given at first. We only see Moshe's making clear of the law in Deuteronomy 16. Appoint judges and officers within all your gates, which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you, according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous justice. Do not distort justice, do not show partiality, nor take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. Follow righteousness, righteousness alone, so that you live and inherit the land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you. Then we set out from Chorev and went through all that great and awesome wilderness which you saw on the way to the mountain of the Amorites, as Yehovah our Elohim had commanded us. And we came to Kadesh Barnea, and this is where the sin of the spies takes place. And I said to you, you have come to the mountain of the Amorites, which Yehovah our Elohim is giving us. See, Yehovah your Elohim has set the land before you. Go up and possess it, as Yehovah Elohim of your fathers has spoken to you. Do not fear, nor be discouraged. So they're being told this same thing that Joshua is encouraged with. And we looked a couple of weeks ago at how Joshua was in the same position as the people. Moshe was somewhat unfazed. You never see Moshe fearing or being discouraged. However, with Joshua, it's different. Deuteronomy 1:38 from this Torah portion says, Yehoshua, the son of Nun, who stands before you, he shall go in there, strengthen him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit. Moshe is also told, charge Yehoshua, strengthen him, and make him brave. This is a particular focus with Yehoshua. Moshe called Yehoshua and said to him before all the eyes of Israel, be strong and courageous, for you are going with this people to the land which Yehovah has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you are to let them inherit it. And it is Yehovah who is going before you. He himself is with you. He does not fail you nor forsake you. Do not fear nor be discouraged. So this is how Yahushua receives encouragement. Okay, he's told very simply, Yehovah is with you. Do not fear or be discouraged. And he reminds himself, and he relies on the words of Yehovah as his encouragement. He was fearful like the people were fearful, like we saw, but he always was encouraged by the word of Elohim as a picture of Yeshua, who was very much the same. He was distressed that he would have to do certain things. And this is something which is really important for us. Okay, there are going to be things, and there have to be things that we are fearful of doing, that it causes us to be distressed, the idea of doing. That is required for it to be a test of our faith. But we are to overcome this fear. And this is something that we see, and we'll see this going all the way back to Yaakov. Deuteronomy 3:23, Yehovah, he commanded Yehoshua, son of Nun, and said, be strong and courageous, for you are to bring the children of Israel into the land of which I swore to them, and I myself am with you. So when we are fearful, this is how we overcome that fear. We remind ourselves that Yehovah is with us. We remind ourselves of what his word says. Joshua 1:1-9, it came to be after the death of Moshe, the servant of Yehovah, that Yehovah spoke to Yehoshua, son of Nun, the assistant of Moshe, saying, Moshe, my servant, is dead. So now arise, pass over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I'm giving them to the children of Israel. Every place on which the sole of your foot treads, I have given you as I spoke to Moshe. So Joshua is encouraged in this way. I'm with you. I've given you the land. I'm with you. I've given you the land. I'm with you. Do not fear. Do not be discouraged. From the wilderness in this Lebanon, even as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, in all the land of the Hittites, and to the great sea, toward the going down of the sun, is your border. No man is going to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moshe, so I am with you. I do not fail you, nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you are to let this people inherit the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous to guard to do according to all the Torah which my servant Moshe commanded you. Do not turn from it right or left, so that you act wisely wherever you go. Do not let this book of the Torah depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, and you are to guard to do according to all that is written in it, for then you shall make your way prosperous and act wisely. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, nor be discouraged, for Yehovah your Elohim is with you wherever you go. And you can see people all the way through Scripture, and we'll look at examples of people who are faced with things which make them scared. They make them afraid. And you've got the people who go with their own imaginations on things. They go with the way that they want to twist the word so that they can feel like they're still doing the word. And then you've got the people who just rely, they accept the word of Elohim, and they do it. They're scared. They're certainly scared, but they rely on what Yehovah has said. Hebrews 4:15, we do not have a high priest unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who was tried in all respects as we are, apart from sin. So as Yeshua is our example, Yehoshua was their example. He's a picture of Yeshua. Not that Yehoshua was without sin, but what we have recorded for us in the events in Yehoshua's life was that when he was scared, when he was tried, in all respects as the people were, he overcame those things. Then Yeshua came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to the disciples, sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took with him Kepha and the two sons of Zabdi, and he began to be grieved and deeply distressed. And he said to them, my soul is exceedingly grieved, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. So he was tried in all respects as we are. And it's not like the trials were just a breeze for him. He was deeply distressed and he was grieved by these things. He knew what was coming. His prayer to his Father, going forward a little, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not my will be done but yours." And we're going to see Yaakov prays in a similar way with a similar outcome. These men of faith show us the same thing. They're afraid, they're troubled by what they have to undergo, but they're prepared to do it, to do the will of the Father. The men of Ai smote about 36 men, for they pursued them from before the gate as far as Shevarim, smote them on the descent, so the hearts of the people melted and became like water. Obviously an idiom for them becoming greatly fearful. And Yahushua tore his garments and fell to the earth on his face before the ark of Yehovah until evening, both he and the elders of Israel, and they put dust on their heads. And Yahushua said, "O Master Yehovah, why have you brought this people over the Jordan at all to give us into the hand of the Amorites to destroy us?" He was reliant on these promises of Yehovah for his encouragement. He was fearful in the face of these things. But he said, if Yehovah is with us, these people cannot be against us. And yet, when they faced the men of Ai, they were overcome of them. So his fear, how he goes to Yehovah, is, why have you brought this people over here if you're not going to be with us and the Amorites are going to destroy us? Yehoshua said to the people, he encourages them, he says, "Do not be afraid nor discouraged. Be strong and courageous, for this is what Yehovah is going to do to all your enemies." And as we get into this, we're going to look at what our enemies are. Okay, our enemies being Hasatan, our enemies being the desires of our flesh, the way that we want to do things in our lives to make our lives easier. The way that Yehovah asks us to do things is sometimes, when he's testing our faith, is difficult for us to do. But we must overcome that by the same means that Joshua had the courage to overcome his enemies. Revelation 6 verse 2 says, "And I looked and saw a white horse, and he who sat on it holding a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out overcoming, Nikaoing, and to Nikao." Okay, so here we see Yeshua going out. Okay, Joshua, a picture of Yeshua going out to overcome the enemies in the land. Yeshua, when he returns, he overcomes his enemies. And it's this same word that we're going to see applied to us overcoming Hasatan and the sin, or the desires of the flesh, not the sin in our lives. 1 John 2:13-14 uses this word. It says, "I write to you, fathers, because you have known him from the beginning. I write to you, young men, because you have nikaod the wicked one. I write to you, little children, because you have known the Father. I wrote to you, fathers, because you have known him from the beginning. I wrote to you, young men, because you are strong, and the word of Elohim stays in you, and you have nikaod the wicked one." So how do we overcome our enemies? Exactly the same way that Joshua did. Be strong and courageous. And he stood on the word of Elohim. 1 John 5:2-4 says, "By this we know that we love the children of Elohim, when we love Elohim and cherish his commands. For this is the love of Elohim, that we cherish his commands, and his commands are not burdensome. Because everyone having been born of Elohim nikaos the world." And this is the Nikkei, the nikaoing, that has nikaod the world. What is it? The same as it was for Joshua, the same as it was for Yaakov, the same as it was for Yeshua. It's our belief. That's how we overcome. Revelation 21:7-8 says, "The one who overcomes, Nikao, shall inherit all this, and I shall be his Elohim, and he shall be my son. But as for the cowardly, the untrustworthy, the abominable, and murderers, and those who fornicate, sorcerers, idolaters, and all the false, their part is in the lake which burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. So you've got two groups. You've got those who overcome the desires of the flesh, the wicked one, and you've got those who are overcome by evil, by the desires of the flesh. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. If you want to encapsulate it in a nutshell. Deuteronomy 7:17 to 19 says, when you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I am unable to drive them out. Do not be afraid of them. Remember well what Yehovah your Elohim did to Pharaoh and to all Mitzrayim. The great trials which your eyes saw, and the signs and wonders, the strong hand, the outstretched arm by which Yehovah your Elohim brought you out. Yehovah your Elohim does so to all the peoples of whom you are afraid. That is who their enemy was. That's what they had to overcome. For us, as we've seen, our enemy is the wicked one, is Hasatan, is the desires of the flesh. We are to overcome evil. Notice in verse 17 it says, when you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I. When you say in your heart, these things are greater than I. The example I always give is of Shabbat. Keeping Shabbat, keeping the high Sabbaths. I can't go into work and tell them I'm not going to work on the Sabbaths, I'm not going to work on the high Sabbaths. I'll be fired. I'm fearful that I'll be fired and I won't be able to provide for my family. When those things arise in your heart and you say these things are greater than I'm unable to drive them out. I'm unable to do these things, which is what people say, isn't it? I can't do that. Do not be afraid of them. Remember well what Yehovah your Elohim has done to your enemies previously. Remember what it is that Yehovah has done. Yehovah your Elohim does so to all of the enemies which you are to overcome. So the fear coming up in your heart, that's not a bad thing. It's what you do with the fear. The fear, in fact, is a good thing because it proves whether or not you trust Yehovah or not. Numbers 14:6-9, we see Yahushua as an example here. And Caleb, son of Yefunah, who were among those who had spied out the land, they tore their garments. They spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, the land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. As people might say, keeping Shabbat and the high Sabbaths, that would be really good. That would be amazing. If Yehovah has delighted in us, he shall bring us into this land, give it to us, a land which is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against Yehovah, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. The defense is turned away from them, and Yehovah is with us. Do not fear them. When those things arise in your heart, let the word of Elohim be your foundation. Do not fear them. Do not rebel against Yehovah because of that which arises in your heart. 1 Peter 1:3-7. Blessed be the Elohim and Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, who according to his great compassion has called us to be reborn to a living expectation through the resurrection of Yeshua Messiah from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled and unfading, having been kept in the heavens for you, who are protected by the power of Elohim through belief for a deliverance ready to be revealed in the last time. Deliverance, salvation, what the word means is to be delivered from one's enemies, okay? The enemies that you are to overcome, okay? And this deliverance is ready to be revealed in the last time when Yeshua is revealed, the revelation of Yeshua, in which you exult, even though for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by manifold trials, in order that the proving of your belief, much more precious than gold that perishes and proven by fire, might be found to result in praise and respect and esteem at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah. These things are necessary. You have to be worried about doing the word of Elohim. You have to be worried about what is going to be the outcome of me doing this, because otherwise it's not a test. It's not a question of do you trust Yehovah or not. If you're not worried about it and it's just like, yeah, it's fine, it's not a test. It doesn't prove that you trust Yehovah. It just proves that you don't think it's a big deal. It has to be something which will be a big deal. Not that it's burdensome to you to rely on Yehovah. It's actually easier in your life to rely upon Yehovah. But it has to be something which costs you something. It has to be something important to you that you're worried about. In the normal course of events, would not usually turn out well for you. 1 Kings 12, 26 to 33. We've looked at Yerovam recently. He was given this test though. He had something which was going to cost him something. He was afraid, in fact, that if he followed the word of Elohim, he was going to die. Yerovam said in his heart, now the kingdom shall return to the house of David. If these people go up to do sacrifices in the house of Yehovah at Yerushalayim, then the heart of this people shall turn back to their master, Rehoboam, king of Yehudah, and they shall slay me and go back to Rehoboam, king of Yehudah. So to Jeroboam, if he followed the word of Elohim, it was going to cost him his life. He made the opposite decision to Yeshua though. So the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, said to the people, it is too much for you to go up to Yerushalayim, see your gods, O Yisrael, which brought you up from the land of Mitzrayim. So what he does here is what we were looking at a couple of weeks ago. Okay, he doesn't just depart from thinking that he's following the word of Elohim. He doesn't just tell the people not to do sacrifices at all. He creates a little space where he can feel like he's doing the word of Elohim. He's still allowing the people to sacrifice, but he's doing it in a way which is not going to cost him anything. He set up one in Bethel, the other he put in Dan. And this matter became a sin for the people who went before the one as far as Dan. And he made the house of high places, made priests from all sorts of people who were not the sons of Levi. Yerovam performed the festival on the 15th day of the 8th Chodesh, like the festival that was in Yehudah, and he offered on the altar. So he did at Bethel, sacrificed to the calves that he had made, and at Bethel he appointed the priests at the high places which he had made. So again, this is just like the people who say, we're not going to do Sukkot properly, we're going to do Sukkot for 3 days, we're going to do it over the weekend so that it's not a problem for us. We're not going to do it on the 15th day of the 7th Chodesh, we're going to do it at a time which isn't going to cost us anything. He made offerings on the altar which he had made at Bethel on the 15th day of the 8th Chodesh, in the Chodesh which he had devised in his own heart, and he performed the festival for the children of Yisrael, offered on the altar, and burned incense. So this is option 1. When you're faced with something which is going to cost you something which you are worried about doing, because if Yehovah was not involved in the event, then it would turn out badly for you. This is option 1. Option 2 is to acknowledge that Yehovah is involved in the events. 2 Kings 19 verse 10. Speak to Chizkiyahu, the king of Yehudah, saying, do not let your Elohim in whom you trust deceive you. This is the implication when people would say to us, you can't do this, you can't trust in Yehovah, don't let him deceive you. They're basically saying to you, don't let the word of Elohim deceive you that everything's going to be okay. It's going to turn out badly. And the situation that Chizkiyahu was in was much more serious than that of Yerovam. Chizkiyahu was looking out on the army of Assyria. And if you know anything about the army of Assyria, they were the most brutal people. The way that they would torture the people that they took over, the things that they did to them were just horrific. Chizkiyahu would have known of this, with them being this huge empire just to the north of him. So his choice was even more stark. But Chizkiyahu was a man who chose to trust in Yehovah. Psalm 81, 13-15. Oh, if my people had listened to me, Israel would walk in my ways. I would subdue their enemies at once and turn my hand against their adversaries. Those who hate Yehovah feign obedience to them. What do? They do what Yerovam did. They don't just go out into all-out disobedience. They make it look like they want to be obedient. Like the people who don't want to do the circumcision, which is asked for in the scriptures, which is the removal of the flesh of the foreskin. They just want to take off the tip of the foreskin instead. We're still doing circumcision, but it's something that they've devised in their own hearts, just like Yerovam. Hebrews 11, 17-19, example of what we are to do. By belief, Abraham, when he was tried up, offered up Yitzchak. And it strikes me that the people who passed the tests that were given as examples in the scriptures, they are faced with something which is much worse than the people that we have as examples of people who did the wrong thing. Yerovam was under no immediate threat. It wasn't like his son was about to die, or like he had the army of Assyria outside who were asking him to come out to them and surrender. Yerovam had much less asked of him. The people that were given as examples of people who walk in the faith, however, much is asked of them. He who had received the promises offered up his only brought forth son, of whom it was said, in Yitzchak your seed shall be called, reckoning that Elohim was able to raise even from the dead, from which he received him back as the type, a picture of Yeshua. So he reckoned that Elohim could do what was absolutely impossible. It wasn't like Yerovam, who would have just had to trust in Yehovah to see him through. It wasn't like it was a dead set thing that he was going to be killed. It was a dead set thing, though, that if Abraham killed his son was going to die. Genesis 32, 6-8. It was when we were going through the Torah portions this time, when we were in this Torah portion, it's been this constant theme all the way through, all the way back to the first Torah portion that I did in this cycle in Noah, where I was talking about Abraham as a man of faith. This idea of faith and what faith actually is has really come out to me. Yaakov becoming Israel is one of the best pictures that we have, though. So the messengers returned to Yaakov saying, we came to your brother Esav, and he also is coming to meet you, 400 men with him. Yaakov, again, he was greatly afraid and he was distressed. So what does he do? Yaakov's response to this is immediately to go to the sort of thing that we see Yerovam doing. He divided the people that were with him and the flocks and herds and camels into two groups. And he said, if Esav comes to the one group and attacks it, then the other group which is left shall escape. Further to that, I'll go at the back. So if he comes and attacks that one, the other group shall escape, probably, and I'll be at the back, and I'll definitely escape. And this is the sort of place that our minds can go to when when something is asked of us in the Word. We immediately start to think, oh, not so sure about that. That's going to be scary. That's going to be something that I'll worry about. Maybe I can think of another way that I can continue to do the Word, but not have to do that thing. This doesn't persist for very long with Yaakov, though. Yaakov goes back to Yehovah and he does exactly what Yehoshua does when he prays to Yehovah. He stands on his word. He stands on what he's been told. Yaakov said, O Elohim of my father Abraham and Elohim of my father Yitzchak, Yehovah who said to me, return to the land and to your relatives, and I do good to you. I do not deserve the least of all the kind acts and all the truth which you have shown your servant, for I passed over this Yarden with my staff, and now I have become two groups. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, the hand of Esav, for I fear him, lest he come and shall smite me and the mother with the children. And you said, I shall certainly do good to you, and shall make your seed as the sand of the sea, which are too numerous to count. So it's exactly the same pattern that is all the way through Scripture. Here's this thing that you're afraid of, that distresses you. Are you going to do it? Are you going to stand on the promises that you've been given? After wrestling with the angel, he said, your name is no longer called Yaakov, but Yisrael, because you have striven with Elohim and with men, and you've what? You've overcome. That's exactly what we're to do. When there's enemies which we are fearful of, things that distress us, things that we are worried, I don't want to have to do that thing, because if Yehovah's not involved, this is going to turn out badly. It requires of us that trust. It proves our belief that we believe and trust that Yehovah is involved. Mark 4:13-14, the parable of the sower encapsulates all of this perfectly. Yeshua said to them, do you not understand this parable? How then shall you understand all parables? This understanding is the key to understanding all of the Scriptures. It's the key to understanding what belief is, what we're going to encounter in our lives, and what is expected of us. The sower sows the word. These then are the ones by the wayside where the word is sown, and when they hear, Hasatan comes immediately and takes away the word that was sown in their hearts. Likewise, these are the ones sown on rocky places, who when they hear the word, immediately receive it with joy. They have no root in themselves, but are short-lived. Then when what? Then those fears, those pressures or persecution arise because of the word. Immediately they stumble. They're short-lived. All it takes is that little bit of pressure, like King Jeroboam. Oh no, I'm going to be killed if the people go up to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices. Immediately they stumble. Others are sown among the thorns. These are they who hear the word, and the worries of this age and the deceit of riches and the desires for other matters entering in choke the word, and it becomes fruitless. Oh no, there's all these other things that I have to worry about in my life. I have to worry about this and that. I'm not going to trust Yehovah with those things. I don't trust Yehovah. Therefore, the word becomes fruitless. It is without power. As Paul says, the Torah is weak through the flesh, because the flesh will not submit to Yehovah's law. We have to follow it by walking in the Spirit. Those sown on good soil, very simple. Those who hear the word and accept it and bear fruit. That's it. That's all that's required. You hear it, you accept it, and you bear fruit. It doesn't matter what is asked. This is what the word says. Okay, so there's all of these giants in the land. Normally, I wouldn't go in and fight those giants. But Yehovah has told me, you've got to go in and fight them. So that's fine. Okay, that's what he said, I'm going to go in. You can encourage yourself with the word. You can pray to Yehovah and remind him of what he said. But it comes down to, do you accept the word or not? And all of you came near to me and said, let us send men before us, and let them search out the land for us and bring back word to us of the way by which we should go up, and of the cities into which we would come. This is how Moshe records it in Deuteronomy. The matter was good in my eyes, so I took 12 of your men, 1 man from each tribe, and they turned and went up into the mountains and came to the Wadi Eshkol and spied it out. And they took some of the fruit of the land in their hands and brought it down to us. And they brought back word to us, saying, the land which Yehovah our Elohim is giving to us is good. Okay, just like people might say, Shabbat is good. Keeping the high Sabbaths is good. But am I going to do them? It's recorded in Numbers 13, 1-3, slightly differently. Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. Send 1 man from each tribe of their fathers, everyone a leader among them. And by the command of Yehovah, Moshe sent them from the wilderness of Paran. So it seems that they came to Moshe and suggested it to him. He went to speak to Yehovah, and Yehovah commanded him how he should do it. all of the men who were heads of the children of Israel. They returned from spying out the land after 40 days. They went and came to Moshe and Aharon and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh, and they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they reported to him and said, "We went to the land where you sent us. Truly it flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit." They came back and they said, "The land's good. But the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are walled very great." And we saw the descendants of Anak there too. But the boss, if we go in and we speak to the boss, he's fired people before for asking for time off. Not sure that we're going to be able to do it. This is too strong for us. This is too great for us. I am unable to do this thing. But you would not go up and rebelled against the mouth of Yehovah your Elohim. That's your choice. You either accept the word and you do it, or you look at the enemies, you say, "I am unable to overcome them." You rebel against the mouth of Yehovah. Grumbled in your tents and said, "Because Yehovah was hating us, he has brought us out of the land of Mitzrayim to give us into the hand of the Amorites to destroy us. Where are we going to? Our brothers have made our hearts melt, saying the people are greater and taller than we. The cities are great and walled up to the heavens." And we saw the sons of the Anakim there too. And we saw when we looked at the Torah portion that this happens in Shalach Lecha. We looked at the importance of our words and how we speak to each other and exhort and encourage one another. Numbers 14, 1-3 says, "Then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel grumbled against Moshe and against Aharon. And all the congregation said to them, 'If only we had died in the land of Mitzrayim, or if only we had died in this wilderness. Why is Yehovah bringing us to this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should become a prey? Would it not be better for us to turn back to Mitzrayim? Would it not be better to make 2 calves where the children of Israel can offer sacrifices to Yehovah? Would it not be better if, when we can avoid it, we don't work on Shabbat? But, if we need to and we're unable to overcome it, then we do work on Shabbat. Would that not be better? Then I said to you, have no dread or fear of them. Notice Moshe says, I said to you, have no dread or fear of them. Yehovah your Elohim, who is going before you, he does fight for you according to all that he did for you in Mitzrayim before your eyes. And in the wilderness where you saw how Yehovah your Elohim has borne you, as a man bears his son, in all the way that you went until you came to this place. Yet in this matter, you are putting no trust in Yehovah your Elohim. Same thing can be said to us. Okay, all of these things, remember what Yehovah has done to you to bring you to this point. Remember all the things that you've overcome. Remember how Yehovah was there for you and he supernaturally came through in that circumstance. But as we know, in the day that a man turns from his righteousness and does wickedness, in that day none of his righteousness is remembered. Why? In this matter, you are putting no trust in Yehovah your Elohim. Trusting in him isn't something that you do once in a big way and you think, wow, that was amazing. I thought that I was going to die, and yet I trusted in Yehovah and he came through. There you go. That's my act of faith. That's my big act of obedience. That proves my faith before Yehovah. If it comes to something which it can be said, in this matter you are putting no trust in Yehovah your Elohim, you're in the same position as the spies were in. Okay, as the people were in. What happened to them? They did not possess the inheritance. Who is going before you in the way to seek out a place for you to pitch your tents, to show you the way you should go, in fire by night and in a cloud by day. Numbers 14, 5-9. I remember who said some of that stuff. Moshe said, I said this to you. Moshe and Aharon fell on their faces before the assembly of the congregation of Israel. Okay, so Moshe and Aharon are there. Yehoshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Yefunah, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their garments. Okay, so Yehoshua and Caleb are there as well. They spoke to the congregation of the children of Israel. Who spoke to the congregation of the children of Israel? When you read it, it can just come across as it was Joshua and Caleb who spoke to the congregation. But Moshe and Aharon were there as well. They spoke to the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, the land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. So if this is talking about Joshua and Caleb, is it saying that perfectly in rote, both of them said at the same time, the land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land? It's not, is it? They said to them, who? The four of them. And these are the things which were said to them. Not they all said all of these things. The four of them said these things to them. If Yehovah is delighted in us, then he shall bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against Yehovah. Do not fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their defense is turned away from them. Yehovah is with us. Do not fear them. Okay? Moshe said, I said to you, have no dread or fear of them. So that they said to them, they are the things which were said to them, but they weren't all saying it in rote at the same time. Yehovah your Elohim, who is going before you, does fight for you according to all he did for you in Mitzrayim before your eyes. So when Moshe is making this plain to the children of Israel, he says, I was the one who said those particular things to you. Yehovah heard the voice of your words and was wroth and took an oath, saying, none of these men of this evil generation shall see that good land of which I swore to give to your fathers, except Caleb, son of Yefunah, he shall see it, and to him and his children I give the land on which he walked, because he followed Yehovah completely. Numbers 14:26-35 records it as such. Yehovah spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, saying, how long shall this evil congregation have this grumbling against me? I have heard the grumblings which the children of Israel are grumbling against me. Say to them, as I live, declares Yehovah, as you have spoken in my hearing, so I do to you. The carcasses of you who have grumbled against me are going to fall in this wilderness, all of you who were registered according to your entire number from 20 years old and above. This isn't a situation that you want to be in. You don't want to say, oh, I'm going to lose my job and this, that, and the other. Whatever it is, whatever command, it's going to have bad consequences. Because maybe Yehovah will turn around and say, I've heard the grumbling that you have against me. Have at it. You can have the consequences. None of you except Caleb, son of Yefunah, and Yehoshua, son of Nun, shall enter the land which I swore I would make you dwell in. But your little ones whom you said would become a prey, I shall bring in, and they shall know the land which you have rejected. But as for you, your carcasses are going to fall in this wilderness. Your sons shall be wanderers in the wilderness 40 years, and shall bear your whorings until your carcasses are consumed in the wilderness. According to the number of days in which you spied out the land, 40 days, a day for a year, you are to bear your iniquities 40 years, and you shall know my alienation. They're going to see Yehovah working in their lives. But Yehovah said, you will know my alienation from you. Yehovah's there, and he's working for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purposes, who are the second generation. But they're still going to see him working. Maybe they'll mistake seeing Yehovah working in their lives for Yehovah approving who they are and what they're about, as people will do today. I am Yehovah, I have spoken, I shall do all this to this evil congregation who are meeting against me in the wilderness. They are consumed, and there they die. We're told, therefore, since a promise remains of entering into his rest, let us fear lest any of you seem to have come short of it. as it was for them, exactly the same. This history for them is our history. It's what we're living out right now. It's what we're experiencing right now. Yehovah was enraged with me because of you, saying, you do not go in there either. Yahushua, the son of Nun, who stands before you, he shall go in there. Strengthen him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit. And your little ones and your children, who you say are for a prey, who today have no knowledge of good and evil, they are going in there. To them I give it, and they are to possess it. But you turn and take your journey into the wilderness by the way of the sea of reeds. Then you answered and said to me, we have sinned against Yehovah. We ourselves are going up, and we shall fight as Yehovah our Elohim commanded us. And when each one of you had girded on his battle gear, you were ready to go up into the mountain. So here, they're afraid that they're not going to inherit what they've been promised. They're not going to inherit the promised land. So what do? They confess that they've sinned against Yehovah, but do they repent? Do they turn in faith to follow what Yehovah says? No. Yehovah said to me, say to them, do not go up nor fight, for I am not in your midst, lest you be smitten before your enemies. So I spoke to you, but you would not listen, and rebelled against the mouth of Yehovah, and acted proudly, and went up into the mountain again. We want to do it our own way. We don't want to do it when Yehovah's asked us to do it, but we're going to do things our own way so that we can inherit the inheritance. Then the Amorites who dwelt in that mountain came out against you and chased you as bees do and drove you back from Seir to Chomah. And you returned and wept before Yehovah, but Yehovah would not listen to your voice nor give ear to you. So you dwelt in Kadesh many days, according to the days that you dwelt, 40 years. And the second part will look not at overcoming the enemy, but what happens when the enemy overcomes us. So they've set out from Mount Sinai. They got as far as Kadesh Barnea, and then they all rebelled and decided that they didn't have faith in Yehovah. And they were told, you're going to die in the wilderness. So that's where we're at. So then we turned and set out into the wilderness, the way of the sea of reeds, as Yehovah spoke to me, and we went round, this time, Mount Seir, many days. They've gone around Sinai, the Torah, many days. They set out from there. They rebelled. It's the next thing they do. They go round Edom, Esav, many days. And Yehovah spoke to me saying, you've gone around this mountain long enough, turn northward. Because this is what happens in the lives of some people. They come to a point where they're fearful and they allow their fear to overcome them. They're overcome with evil rather than overcoming evil with good. They rebel against Yehovah. Then it kind of becomes a way of life. It kind of becomes something that they've accepted. They don't want to face up to the fact that they've rebelled and that they need to repent, and so they don't confess their guilt before Yehovah. And people can find themselves in this position where they're going round and round Edom, round and round Mount Seir for many days. But what we can see from this, or a truth that we can see in this, is that even at this point, Yehovah says to you, you've gone around this mountain long enough. Turn. Genesis 25, 27 to 29. The boys grew up, and Esav became a man knowing how to hunt, a man of the field, while Yaakov was a Tamim man dwelling in tents. And Yitzchak loved Esav because he ate of his wild game, but Rivkah loved Yaakov. And Yaakov cooked a stew, and Esav came in from the field, and he was weary. So he's tired. He comes in, and he wants the stew. Yaakov cooked the stew, he came in, he was weary. Esav said to Yaakov, please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary. That's why his name was called Edom. Okay, Edom meaning red. He wanted the red stew, that's why his name was Edom. But Yaakov said, sell me your birthright today. And Esav said, look, I'm going to die, so why should I have birthright? Then Yaakov said, swear to me today. And he swore to him and sold his birthright to Yaakov. Yerovam might well have been in the same position. You're giving up the inheritance. If you do this, if you go against Yehovah's instructions, you set up these golden calves. Yerovam might well have turned around and said, look, I'm going to die. What use to me is the birthright. So this is who Esau is. When it comes to it, Esau is more interested in the desires of the flesh. He's more interested in his comforts. He's weary, and he says, give me some of the stew. I don't care if I'm giving up the birthright. That's the implication of his actions anyway. Often when people are in this position, they don't say these things out loud because there's an element of deceit in how they've come to the conclusion. They come to the conclusion that it's okay to have done these things, but the implication of their actions is that they are despising the word of Yehovah. They are bazaing the word of Yehovah. They're lightly esteeming it. Yaakov then gave Esav bread and stew of lentils, and he ate and drank and rose up and left. Thus Esav despised his birthright. That's exactly what people do when they make this same decision. And as I say, people get stuck going round Esau's mountain. But Yehovah says to all of those people, you've gone around this mountain long enough. Come on, turn, go northward. Hebrews 12:12-17. So strengthen the hands which hang down and the weak knees. If you're weary, strengthen yourself. What you strengthen yourself with, same thing Joshua, Yaakov strengthened themselves with the word of Elohim. Make straight paths for your feet, lest the lame be turned aside, but instead to be healed. Pursue peace with all, and pursue set apartness, without which no one shall see the master. See to it that no one falls short of the favor of Elohim, that no root of bitterness springing up causes trouble, by which many become defiled. And of course, this root of bitterness is disobedience. Lest there be anyone who whores or profane one like Esav, who for a single meal sold his birthright. So we're told plainly, this can be you too. Don't be like Esav. Strengthen yourself when you're feeling weak, when you're feeling weary. For you know that afterward, when he wished to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place for repentance, though he sought it with tears. It's not about crying, it's about actually repenting. Deuteronomy 2:4 says, command the people, saying, you are about to pass over into the border of your brothers, the descendants of Esav, who live in Seir. And we find something interesting about these descendants of Esav. We know that we are descendants of Israel. We are Abraham's seed. Okay, the descendants of Esav are those who are like Esav. Find out here, they're afraid of you. And I imagine people watching this world, people are those who overcome, those who stand on Yehovah's word, and when they're fearful, they overcome. You'll find that the people who don't do that, who choose the other route, they're fearful of you. There's something there. When you interact with those people, they're just they're a bit wary of you. And what's behind that, as far as I can discern, is that they know where they stand, and they know where you stand. And that's always going to be the elephant in the room between you. Do not strive with them, for I do not give you any of their land, no, not so much as one footstep, because I've given Mount Seir to Esav as a possession. They're where they are, you're where you are. Don't strive with them. Just like when Paul says in his in the letter to Titus, he says, don't enter into these vain contentions over the Torah. Want someone once, want someone twice, and then they've chosen where they are for themselves. What food you buy from them, with silver you eat, and also what water you buy from them, with silver you drink. And I find this verse interesting. This is often my prayer for people who I know to be Esav. I'll pray that what bits of the word that they have, the food and the water, that people would profit from them, that people can take these things from them. Because I know that I've learned things from people who aren't walking correctly, and that Yehovah uses all things for good for those who are called according to his purpose, those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So my prayer is that when Esav goes out and they're representing Yehovah to the world, that the word which goes out from them will profit people. So the food you can get from them with silver, you eat. Water you buy from them with silver, you drink. For Yehovah your Elohim has blessed you in all the work of your hand. He has known your wandering through this great wilderness these 40 years. Yehovah your Elohim has been with you, and you have not lacked any matter. And yet they knew his alienation. They would have seen that he was looking after them, but he had alienated himself from them. When we passed beyond our brothers, the descendants of Esav, who dwell in Seir, away from the way of the desert plain, away from Elath and Etzion Geber, we turned and passed over by way of the wilderness of Moab. And Yehovah said to me, do not distress Moab, nor stir yourself up against them in battle. For I do not give you any of their land as a possession, because I have given Ar to the descendants of Lot as a possession. And we've looked before at the difference between the descendants of Abraham and the descendants of Lot, or the differences between Lot and Abraham. The Ami who dwelt there formerly, a people as great and numerous, tall as the Anakim, they were also reckoned as Rephaim, like the Anaki, but the Moavi called them Ami. And the Horites formerly dwelt in Seir, but the descendants of Esav dispossessed them, destroyed them from before them, and dwelt in their places. Yisrael did to the land of their possession, which Yehovah had given them. Now rise up and pass over the Wadi Zered. So we passed over the Wadi Zered. And the time we took to come from Kadesh Barnea until we passed over the Wadi Zered was 38 years, until all the generation of the men of battle was consumed from the midst of the camp, as Yehovah had sworn to them. So before they entered into the promised land, all of those who had rebelled, all of those who had been fearful and chosen to rebel, had been removed from the midst of the camp. Also, the hand of Yehovah was against them to destroy them from the midst of the camp until they were consumed. And it came to be, when all the men of battle had finally perished from among the people, the Yehovah spoke to me, saying, this day you are to pass over Ar, the boundary of Moab. And when you come near the children of Ammon, do not distress them, nor stir yourself up against them. For I do not give you any of the land of the children of Ammon as a possession, because I have given it to the descendants of Lot as a possession. It's the same sort of idea. Esav, those who come from Esav, those who come from Lot as opposed to coming from Abraham, their lot is their lot. Yehovah has given them their possession. Don't strive with them. Exactly what Paul says in his letter to Titus. That was also reckoned as a land of the Rephaim. Rephaim formerly dwelt there, but the Ammonites called them Zamzummim. A people as great and numerous and tall as the Anakim, but Yehovah destroyed them before them, and they dispossessed them and dwelt in their place. As he had done for the descendants of Esav, who dwelt in Seir, when he destroyed the Chori from before them, they dispossessed them and dwelt in their place even to this day. And the Avim, who dwelt in villages as far as Azar, the Kaphtorim, who came from Kaphtor, destroyed them and dwelt in their place. Yehovah is involved even in the lives of our enemies. Obviously, he raises people to power. He puts rulers in power, and it's all done for the profit of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Arise, set out and pass over the Wadi Arnon. See, I have given into your hand Sihon the Amorite, king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin to possess it and stir yourself up against him in battle. This day I begin to put the dread and fear of you upon the peoples under all the heavens, who when they hear the report of you shall tremble and shake because of you. Then I sent messengers from the wilderness of Kedemoth to Sihon, king of Heshbon, with words of peace, saying, let me pass over through your land on the highway. I shall go on the highway and turn neither to the right nor to the left. What food you sell me for silver, I shall eat, and what water you sell me for silver, I shall drink. Only let me pass over on foot. As the descendants of Esav who dwell in Seir, and the Moabites who dwell in Ar did for me, until I pass over the Jordan to the land Yehovah our Elohim is giving to us. But Sihon, king of Heshbon, would not let us pass over, for Yehovah your Elohim hardened his spirit and strengthened his heart to give him into your hand, as it is this day. And Yehovah said to me, see, I have begun to give Sihon and his land over to you. Begin to possess in order to possess his land. And Sihon and all his people came out to fight against us to fight at Yahatz. And Yehovah our Elohim gave him over to us, so we smote him and his sons and all of our people. So again, remember that these enemies that they face, we can see what's happening to them and know that it's the same as us coming to overcome our enemies by faith. And we took all his cities at that time, and we put the men, women, and little ones of every city under the ban. We left none remaining. Only the livestock we took as plunder for ourselves, and the spoil of the cities which we captured. From Aroer, which is on the edge of the Wadi Arnon, and the city that is by the Wadi as far as Gilad, there was not one city too high for us. Yehovah our Elohim gave all to us. Only you did not go near the land of the children of Ammon, anywhere along the Wadi Yabok, or the cities, or the mountains, or wherever Yehovah our Elohim have forbidden us. Then we turned and went up the way to Bashan, and Og, king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. And Yehovah said to me, do not fear him, for I have given him and all his people and his land into your hand. And you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. Again, the same thing. Yehovah is going to do such to all of your enemies. Don't let it become a matter of, in this matter, you have not trusted in Yehovah. Og, he was a giant fellow, wasn't he? I've given him and all his people and his land into your hand. You shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites. It doesn't matter what the enemy looks like. It doesn't matter if they look more formidable. You will conquer them in exactly the same way as Yehovah has laid out, as happens to his people throughout the scriptures. So Yehovah our Elohim also gave into our hands Og, king of Bashan, with all his people, and we smote him until he had no survivors remaining. And we captured all his cities at that time. There was not a city which we did not take from them. 60 cities, all the district of Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All these cities were fenced with high walls, gates and bars, besides a great many unwalled towns. And we put them under the banners we did to Sihon, king of Heshbon, putting the men, the women, and the children of every city under the ban. But all the livestock and the spoil of the cities we took as booty to ourselves. And at that time we took the land from the hand of the two kings of the Amorites that was beyond the Jordan, from the Wadi Arnon to the Mount Chamon. Sidonians call Chamon Seyon, and the Amorites call it Sinir. All the cities of the plain, all Gilad and all Bashan as far as the Salcha and the Edrei, cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. For only Og, king of Bashan, was left of the remnant of the Rephaim. See, his bedstead was an iron bedstead Is it not in Rabbah of the children of Ammon? 9 cubits is its length, 4 cubits its width, according to the cubit of a man. So that's who these giants were in the land. These were massive, tall men. They were great men. This land, which we possessed at that time from Aroer, which is by the Wadi Arnon, and half the mountains of Gilad and its cities, I gave to the Reuvenites and the Gadites. The rest of Gilad and all Bashan, the kingdom of Og, I gave to the half tribe of Manasseh. All the district of Argob with all Bashan, called the land of the Rephaim. Yair, son of Manasseh, had taken all the district of Argob as far as the border of the Gershonites and the Maachathites, and called them after his own name, the Bashan of Havath Yair, to this day. And to Machir I gave Gilad, and to the Reuvenites and the Gadites I gave from Gilad as far as the Wadi Arnon, the middle of the Wadi as the border, as far as the Wadi Yabok, the border of the children of Ammon, and the desert plain with the Yarden as the border, from Kinnereth as far as the sea of the Arava, the salt sea, below the slopes of Pisgah on the east. Okay, so all the other side of the Jordan, before they entered in, they were given to Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh, as we saw last week. I commanded you at that time, saying, Yehovah your Elohim has given you this land to possess. All of you sons of might, pass over armed before your brothers, the children of Israel. But let your wives, your little ones, and your livestock, I know that you have much livestock, stay in your cities which I have given you. And so Yehovah has given rest to your brothers as to you, and they also possess the land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving them beyond the Yarden. Then you shall return, each man to his possession, which I have given you. And we'll see that promise fulfilled in the book of Joshua towards the end. I commanded Yahushua at that time, saying, your eyes have seen all that Yehovah your Elohim has done to these 2 kings. Yehovah does the same to all the kingdoms which you are passing over. Do not fear them, for Yehovah your Elohim fights for you. And I sought favor ve'et chanan with Yehovah at that time, saying, so this is the juncture between Devarim and ve'et chanan. So now we're going to go on to start looking at Israel's future. O Master Yehovah, you've begun to show your servant your greatness, your strong hand. Who is a God in the heavens or on the earth who does according to your works and according to your might? I pray, let me pass over and see the good land beyond the Yarden, this good hill country and Lebanon. But Yehovah was enraged with me. He was passed over with me, is what it says. Alas, for your sake, or because of you, and would not listen to me. And Yehovah said to me, enough, speak to me no more about this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah, lift your eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward. Look with your eyes, for you do not pass over, you do not avar this Yarden, but charge Yahushua, strengthen him, make him brave, for he does pass over before this people, causes them to inherit the land which you see. So we start to see this future perfect tense used here. He basically says, Yehovah was past that issue with me. He said, enough, I don't want to hear any more of it. Make Joshua brave. Strengthen him, because he does pass over. He's the one that's going to pass over. He's telling Moshe what the future is here. He's the one who passes over, and he causes them to inherit the land which you see. And we dwelt in the valley opposite Beth Peor. Okay, so that's about there. That's where they are, and they're about to go over the Yarden. Do not add to the word which I command you. Do not take away from it, so as to cherish the commands of Yehovah your Elohim, which I'm commanding you. So this is exactly what those who fear what they are asked to do. In there, we'll do Sukkot at a different time, or we'll do this, or we'll make circumcision, not cutting off the flesh of the foreskin, just cutting off the tip, or whatever it looks like. Instead of wearing 4 tzitzit, we will wear 2 tzitzit. What these people are doing is they're either adding to or they're taking away from what Moshe commanded. Your eyes have seen what Yehovah did at Baal Peor, for Yehovah your Elohim has destroyed from your midst all the men who followed Baal Peor. But you who are clinging to Yehovah your Elohim are alive today, every one of you. So again, another great verse to show us the people who die in the plagues are the ones who sin. Everyone else, those who cling to Yehovah, they're alive. They did not die. See, I have taught you laws and justices, as Yehovah my Elohim commanded me to do thus in the land which you go to possess. And you have cherished and done them. Well, had they? At this point, they hadn't. Again, it's this future perfect tense which is used. I have taught you laws and justices. That's what Moshe did. And you have done them. Again, we're going to see these two groups forming, those who have cherished the commands and those who have rebelled against Yehovah. For this is your wisdom and your understanding before the eyes of the people who hear all these laws, and they have said, only a wise and understanding people is this great nation. Remember what happens in the millennium. Okay, all of the nations are going to come to Jerusalem to learn of the Torah. For what great nation is there which has Elohim so near to it, as Yehovah our Elohim is to us whenever we call on him? And what great nation is there that has such laws and righteous justices like all this Torah which I set before you this day? Only guard yourself and guard your soul diligently, lest you forget the words your eyes have seen, and lest they turn aside from your heart all the days of your life, and you have made them known to your children and your grandchildren. So guard your heart, and you have made them known to your children and your grandchildren. The day when you stood before Yehovah your Elohim in Horeb, Yehovah said to me, assemble the people to me, and I make them shema my words, so that they learn to fear me all the days they live on the earth, and teach them to their children. And you came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire to the heart of the heavens, darkness, cloud, and thick darkness. And Yehovah spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the voice of words, but saw no form. You only heard a voice. Same is true for us. Okay, the image that we see of Yehovah is what we see in his word. He made known to you his covenant, which he commanded you to do, the 10 words, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. So here, this is another word which is commonly translated as declared. He declared to you his covenant. But this is not ba'ar. It's not to make plain something to you. This is the word nagad. Okay, nagad. To be conspicuous, to tell or to make known, to tell, declare, to announce something, to declare it. Okay, properly to front, stand boldly out opposite. Okay, so this is to declare, like we are to declare the good news to people. And this word is actually related, or the Greek word which is used in the Septuagint is actually related to the word evangelize, which we'll see. Okay, this is anangelo. Okay, this is the word which is used in the Septuagint where nagad is used. Okay, to announce, to make known, to report, to bring back tidings, or to rehearse. And you can see that it's from this word, agalos. Agalos is angels, or the word from which angels comes. Angels in Hebrew and in Greek means an angel. It also means a messenger, somebody who does this, who brings forth the message. Okay, so anangelo is the word which is used in the Septuagint, and it's related to this word, euangelizo. Okay, this is to bring tidings as well, but this is to bring good tidings, to announce glad tidings. So what Yehovah was doing is he was anageloing his covenant to these people. We're told, indeed, the good news was brought to us as well as to them, as well as to those people who are in the wilderness. This is what Yehovah is doing at this point. He's bringing the good news to them. But the word which they heard did not profit them, not having been mixed with belief in those who heard it. Okay, so Yehovah says, I will establish a better covenant made on better promises with those who believe. Okay, those who are actually going to carry out the covenant, those for whom the Torah is written in their hearts and in their minds. Matthew 7:7-15 says, ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be opened. You can think when you read this, or I would think, some people would ask that Yehovah shows them his word or reveals to them things in their word. And yet they never come to a knowledge of the truth. So what is happening here? Is there a man among you who, if his son asks for bread, shall give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, shall he give him a snake? If you then, being wicked, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more shall your Father who is in the heavens give what is good to those who ask him? The problem here is not everybody asks him for what is good. Not everybody is asking him for a fish. Some people would phrase it and understand it in their minds as, I'm asking him for what is good. But what they're actually asking him for is a snake. What they are seeking is not Yehovah. What they are seeking is another. And that is exactly what they receive. Therefore, whatever you wish men to do to you, do also to them. For this is the Torah and the prophets. Enter in through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction. And there are many who enter in through it. Because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life. And there are few who find it. Because there are few who are seeking for that. So there are few who find it. Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are savage wolves. Because that's actually what people are asking for. They think that they're asking for what is good. They think that they're asking for a fish, but they're actually asking for a snake. And that's exactly what they get. They get the false prophets who give them what they are seeking. Luke 13:22-23 says, someone said to him, Master, are there few who are being saved? And he said to them, strive to enter through the narrow gate, because many, I say to you, shall seek to enter in and shall not be able. Okay, so there are few who find the narrow gate, and there are few of those who find it who are able to enter in. Consider this. Consider that you are supposed to be fearful, or that there are supposed to be things that challenge you, and you're either going to accept his word and do it even when it's a challenge, and it has to be a challenge. You will then be one of the ones who sought for the way, found the way, and then were able to enter in, rather than being, and I would say all of us are in the position of people who have sought for the way, found the way, but now we're on this precipice. Are we going to be the few who, having found the way which leads to life, are going to be able to enter in because we trust in Yehovah? Or are we going to be those who are unable to enter in, even though they try to? They will seek to enter in, but won't be able. Yehovah commanded me at that time to teach you laws and justices, for you to do them in the land which you pass over to possess. Therefore diligently guard yourselves, for you saw no form when Yehovah spoke to you out of the midst of the fire, lest you should do corruptly and shall make for yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female. Of course, this is what people do. They create something. They create an image that they want to worship. But Yehovah showed no other image so that people didn't go astray in this way. The way he shows us his image, he came as Yeshua. And we are to be recreated in the image of his son. Where do we find that image? Who is Yeshua? He is the Word. The only image we're ever shown is his Word, so that we don't go and create another image. The likeness of any beast that is on the earth, or the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the heavens, the likeness of any creature that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth. Lest you lift up your eyes to the heavens, and shall see the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the host of the heavens, and you be drawn away into bowing down to them and serving them, which Yehovah your Elohim has allotted to all the peoples under all the heavens. All the peoples under all the heavens have created these false gods for themselves. The things of the world, the ways of the world, these things that people fashion into a god and call it Yehovah. We'll look at that more when we get into the third part. But Yehovah makes it explicitly clear that he is worried that the people are going to do this, because this is what his people do. Yehovah has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Mitzrayim, to be his people, an inheritance as it is today. And we've looked at this phrase before, this iron furnace. Okay, the word iron in Hebrew is batzel. Okay, batzel can mean iron, can talk of something which is hard or harsh. Figuratively, therefore, it talks of harshness, strength, and oppression. We've looked at this idea before. The furnace is like a smelting pot, place where things are melted, a place where things are refined also. So it can be interpreted to mean an oppressive melting pot, which is certainly a good picture of the world. But I want to show you another way that we can interpret this as well. This phrase is not set in stone exactly what it means. Perhaps it has multiple meanings. Okay, iron, this is Gesenius on iron. No, hardness and firmness. He says, of a hard rule in Isaiah 48:4, which we'll look at, thy neck is an iron sinew, said of the obstinacy of the people. Okay, so let's look at Isaiah 48. I have declared the former events from the beginning, and they have gone forth from my mouth, and I made you shema them. Suddenly I have done, and they come to be. Because I knew that you are stubborn, and your neck was an iron sinew, and your forehead bronze. I declared it to you. It's that word, nagad. I made it known to you in the same way that the gospel is made known to people. Before it comes, I have made you shema, lest you should say, my idol has done them, and my carved image and my molded image have commanded them. I've told you about this before it's come to be, so that you don't look to your God that you've made and said, it was my God that commanded this and brought it to be. You have heard, look at them all, and do you not negate it? I have made you shema, new things from this time, hidden ones which you have not known. Now they have been created, and not since before, and before this day you have not heard them, lest you should say, look, I knew them. So they were hidden, so that the people didn't say, our gods commanded these things. I already knew these things. No, you have not heard. No, you have not known. No, from before your ear has not been open, because I knew that you are indeed treacherous, and you are called a transgressor from the womb. For my name's sake, I will postpone my displeasure. For my praise, I will hold it back from you, so as to not cut you off. See, I have refined you, but not with silver. I have chosen you in the furnace of affliction. Okay, so we've got them here being the iron. and it being the furnace of affliction where they are refined. So another way that we can understand this phrase is as a way to refine the stubborn. I've taken you out of that. I've chosen you out of that. I knew you were treacherous. I knew you were stubborn from before. So I've taken you out of that iron furnace. Yehovah was enraged with me because of your words, and swore that I would not pass over the Jordan, and that I would not enter the good land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. For I am to die in this land. I am not passing over the Jordan, but you are passing over and have possessed that good land. Guard yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of Yehovah your Elohim, which he made with you, and have made for yourselves a carved image in the form of whatever Yehovah your Elohim has forbidden you. And we're going to see this as an idea in the third part. The idea you've made yourself a carved image in the form of whatever Yehovah has forbidden. It's spoken of by the prophet Ezekiel of them putting the stumbling block of their iniquity before their face. That being their idol, whatever it is which causes them to stumble, that is what they've put before their face, whatever Yehovah has forbidden. For Yehovah your Elohim is a consuming fire, a jealous ale. When you bring forth children and grandchildren and have grown old in the land and have done corruptly. So again, we see these two groups of people. Okay, you have gone astray from Elohim. You have made these other gods. You have put the stumbling block of iniquity before your face. The other people, you have entered into the land. You have possessed the land. You have done good in the land. You have cherished the commands of Yehovah, and have grown old in the land, and have done corruptly, and made a carved image in the form of whatever, and have done what is evil in the eyes of Yehovah your Elohim to provoke him. I have called the heavens and earth to witness against you on that day, that you soon completely perish from the land which you pass over the Jordan to possess. You do not prolong your days in it, but are completely destroyed. So in these two Torah portions, we've seen the history of Israel, which is us, where we are right now. In this Torah portion, Be'et Hanan, we see the two promises which are made to each one of us individually. If you do this, you have done this. If you do this, you have done that. These are your potential futures. Choose this day which future you will follow. Yehovah has scattered you among the peoples, and you have been left few in number among the Gentiles where Yehovah drives you. And there you have served gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which you neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. But from there you have sought Yehovah your Elohim, and have found, when you search for him with your heart, with all your heart and all your soul. In your distress, when these words have found you in the latter days, then you have returned to Yehovah your Elohim and have obeyed his voice. For Yehovah your Elohim is a compassionate ale. He does not forsake you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers which he swore to them. For ask now of the days that are past, which were before you, since the day that Elohim created man on the earth, and ask from one end of the heavens to the other end of the heavens, whether there has been a word as great as this, or has been heard like it. Has the people heard the voice of Elohim speaking out of the midst of the fire, as you have heard, and live? Or has Elohim tried to go and take for himself a nation from the midst of a nation, by trials and by signs and by wonders and by battle and by a strong hand, by an outstretched arm and by great fearsome deeds, according to all that Yehovah your Elohim did for you in Mitzrayim before your eyes? The exact way that we're to encourage ourselves, the way that they're told to encourage themselves, the way that Joshua encourages himself. Remember the things that Yehovah has done. Has this happened to any other people? You have been shown it rather, to know that Yehovah himself is Elohim. There is no one beside him. From the heavens he let you hear his voice to instruct you. And on earth he showed you his great fire, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire. Because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them, brought you out of Mitzrayim with his presence and with his great power. And now in our position, we know that this promise is in fact given to those who walk as those whom he loved walk. They're the ones that he chose, not just the physical descendants of these people. We know that he's talking about somebody else here, that he's actually talking about us. To drive out from before you nations greater and stronger than you, to bring in, to give you their land as an inheritance as it is today. And you have known today and have recalled to your heart that Yehovah himself is Elohim in the heavens above, and on the earth beneath there is none else. And you have cherished his laws and his commands, which I command you today, so that it is well with you and with your children after you, so that you prolong your days on the soil which Yehovah, your Elohim, is giving you for all time. So it seems confusing in the English when translated correctly. When you appreciate it's talking to two distinct groups of people and is making two promises to the people who are to come, it makes much better sense. Then Moshe separated 3 cities beyond the Jordan toward the rising of the sun. For him who killed someone to flee there, he who kills his neighbor unintentionally without having hated him in time past, and might flee to one of these cities and live. Betzer in the wilderness, in the level land for the Reuvenites, Ramoth in Gilad for the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan for the Menashites. So these are the ones that Moshe appointed. For the ones on one side of the Jordan, we're going to have to wait until towards the end of the book of Joshua to see the ones on the other side when they make it there. And this is the Torah which Moshe laid before the children of Israel. These are the witnesses and the laws and the justices which Moshe spoke to the children of Israel after they came out of Mitzrayim. Beyond the Jordan, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, in the land of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon, whom Moshe and the children of Israel had smitten after they came out of Mitzrayim. And they took possession of his land, and the land of Og, king of Bashan, 2 kings of the Amorites, who were before the Jordan toward the rising of the sun, from Aroer, which is on the bank of the Wadi Arnon, even to Mount Sion, which is Hamon, and all the desert plain beyond the Jordan, as far as the Sea of Arava, below the slopes of Pisgah. So Deuteronomy 5:1 is separation point between that first speech of Moshe's that we heard. Now Moshe calls all Yisrael together again, and he said to them, "Hear, O Yisrael, the laws and justices which I speak in your hearing today, and you have learned them and cherished to do them." You have learned and cherished to do them. Yehovah our Elohim made a covenant with us in Chorev. Yehovah did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us, those who are here today, all of us who are alive. So this is true throughout history. Yehovah makes the covenant with us. Okay, those people weren't actually there when the covenant was made, but Yehovah made that covenant with them as he also makes it with us. It's not the covenant by which we're saved. We're saved by the Abrahamic covenant, but we are in covenant with Yehovah, that we have his laws written in our hearts and in our minds so that we would do them. Yehovah spoke with you face to face on the mountain from the midst of the fire. I stood between Yehovah and you at that time to, that word again, Nagad to you the word of Yehovah. So the first time we see Moshe declared to them the Torah, it was Ba'ar, which is to make plain to them. Here, he says, I stood between you at that time to Nagad, which is the same way Yehovah declared his covenant. He made it known to them. Again, related to the word of bringing the good news, to evangelize. To you the word of Yehovah, for you were afraid because of the fire, and you did not go up to the mountain, saying, I am Yehovah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. So this is the first word As we go through, we're going to have divisions between which word is which aren't going to be the traditional ones, certainly not the ones the Christianity accepts. They would mash this one together with the second word. But this is where it all starts, just like we have with the sacrifices, where the first sacrifice to be given is the burnt offering, the offering of oneself entirely. Here the first word is, I am Yehovah your Elohim. If you can get that one right, all of the rest of the scriptures fall into place. The problem is most people don't get that one right. They don't make Yehovah their Elohim. They make Yehovah that Elohim that they've heard about, that asks them to do things, but they're not really 100% sure whether they should do them, and they're a bit scared of trusting in him, so they're not sure whether they will or not. Let's take it on a situation-by-situation basis. I am Yehovah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. You have no other gods against my face. You do not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them, nor serve them. Okay, and that's where the actual division between this commandment and the next one actually is. We looked at that recently, the next commandment being, don't bear my name in vain. If you continue this verse, he explains his name. So we'll see that as we go on. But people do this. They make it, Yehovah is holy. He's set apart. He's kadosh. He's set apart from the world. And yet they make another Elohim in their heads that they'll call Yehovah, who is based on the things of the world, not the one who is distinct and set apart from all of those things. They make an image that is like unto the things that are already familiar to them. And they bow down to them and they serve them. Serving that God, being a slave or a servant to that God, is something that's important for us to reckon with when we're dealing with idols in our lives, recognizing what an idol is. Ezekiel 14, 2-8. The word of Yehovah came to me saying, Son of man, these men have set up their idols in their hearts. So we know back then, it wasn't just an issue of have you made a god out of wood or out of stone that you bow down to and you serve. They had these idols in their hearts and have put the stumbling block of their iniquity before their face. What's that saying? It's saying that thing which causes you to stumble, that thing which causes you to sin, you have set that before your face, to turn your face to something, to give it worship. That's what they're doing. They're worshipping the things that cause them to sin. That's what the idols in their hearts are. Should I let them inquire of me at all? Therefore speak to them, and you shall say to them, Thus said the Master Yehovah, everyone of the house of Israel who sets up idols in his heart, puts the stumbling block of his iniquity before his face to worship that, shall come to the prophet. I, Yehovah, shall answer him who comes according to his many idols, in order to lay hold of the house of Israel by their heart, for they have become estranged from me by their idols, all of them. Okay, we know that we become estranged from Yehovah by our sin. When we turn our faces towards the stumbling block of our iniquity, what causes us to stumble, that becomes our idol. They become estranged from me by these things. They've chosen those things instead of me. Now we've looked at overcoming the enemy, overcoming the desires of the flesh, and overcoming Hasatan, who preys on the desires of the flesh. We've also looked at being overcome by those things, like Asaph was overcome by those things. These things, these idols, are the way in which those two realities can be avoided in the mind of one who does not wish to be obedient. Often you may think, how can it be that it's so clear and yet they don't get it? With many people, the way that happens is because they create an idol. and they put the stumbling block of their iniquity before their face to worship that instead, and come up with an idol which allows that to happen. With Yerovam, who's setting up the golden calf somewhere else other than Jerusalem, so he could avoid what he didn't want to do. Therefore say to the house of Israel, thus said the Master Yehovah, repent and turn back from your idols, turn back your faces from all your abominations. Okay, same thing that he asks when he says to those who are going around Mount Seir, those who have been overcome by their flesh, overcome by evil. He says, you've gone around this mountain long enough. Turn, repent, turn back from your idols. For anyone of the house of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn in Israel, who separates himself from me, sets up idols in his heart, puts the stumbling block of his iniquity before his face, shall come to a prophet to inquire of him concerning me. I, Yehovah, shall answer him myself, which is interesting when we see the connection between the false prophets and the false teachers. Yehovah says, when they come to the false prophets or the false teachers to inquire of me, I myself shall answer them. If they're seeking something else, that's what they're going to find. And I shall set my face against that man and make him a sign and a proverb, and I shall cut him off from the midst of my people, and you shall know that I am Yehovah. So throughout history, there have always been these other gods, these other idols. It's always been a problem. Okay, people will create these gods according to their own understanding of the world. We'll have a god of war, and when we go into war, we better please the god of war. We'll have a god of this, that, and the other. We'll have a god of the crops or a god of fertility. Whatever we want to achieve, then we will craft our worship towards that particular god. So gods that are righteous for us is a God that the people of Canaan had. One of the gods the people have had all the way throughout history. Okay, they are particularly warned at this point. When you go into the land, don't take the gods that the Canaanites worship for yourself. Okay, this is a list of the deities that the Canaanites worshipped. This God is called Siddiq. And he is the God of righteousness or justice. Okay, very similar to the Hebrew word Zedek. Very similar to, but not the same. This is Siddiq, the God of righteousness or justice. So if you want righteousness or justice to be done, you've got that as a concern in your life at that time. Who do you go to? You go to Siddiq. So Siddiq is the God that is responsible for righteousness, or for the Mishpatim. In our world, we have people who believe in a God like this, and they wouldn't even reckon it to be this God, but people who believe in karma, people who believe in cause and effect in the spiritual world, where what you put out will come back upon you. But what is that? What's the spiritual underpinnings of that? Basically, what that equates to is, I don't have to worry about being righteous in my own life. If I'm righteous, maybe I'll get rewarded. If I'm not righteous, maybe something bad will come upon me. But ultimately, what is going to change me into a righteous person is not me. It's the God of righteousness. It's karma. Over many lifetimes, I'll get better and better, because I'll keep doing these bad things and they'll keep coming back on me. I won't have to change myself. I will eventually be changed by the God of righteousness, by karma, and then I will become this enlightened being, and I'll be reincarnated as something beautiful. Same with Yeshua. People have made Yeshua into this God. They have fashioned Yeshua into the same thing. They've taken this spiritual idea, this idea from the world. They haven't taken the image from the scriptures, from the voice of God. They've taken it from these pagan ideas and from these ideas of the world, and they've made Yeshua the same. Okay, the lyrics to a song, well, the cross will always will always represent the love God had for me. When the Lord of glory, heaven sent, gave all on Calvary, just for me, Jesus came and did it just for me. It's the same lie. It contains elements of truth, bits of it that you could say, well, that's true, but it's been twisted. Okay? The idea behind it is that Jesus came and he did righteousness, and then when he died, he said, it is finished. As if that was the end of righteousness. Nobody needs to do any righteousness anymore. The God of righteousness has come and done righteousness, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. Gods that merely require one to appear righteous to men. And these things are the implications of the worship of these gods. Most people who worship these gods wouldn't phrase these things in the same way. They wouldn't say, oh, my God, I only have to appear righteous to men. But you can see that is their understanding of who God is by their actions and how they carry themselves. 1 John 3, 5-7 says, you know that he was manifested to take away our sins. In him there is no sin. Everyone staying in him does not sin. Everyone sinning has neither seen him nor known him. Little children, let no one lead you astray. The one doing righteousness is righteous even as he is righteous. So it's not about how you appear. It's about what you do. It's not about the God of righteousness coming and doing all these things. It's about you conforming yourself to that image. And these people who believe that you only have to appear outwardly righteous to men have always existed. This is something that people today believe in. Again, they won't explicitly explain it to you in those terms, but you can see that that's what they believe by the way that they worship God. Matthew 23, 1-5, Yeshua spoke to the crowd and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit on the seat of Moshe. Therefore, whatever they say to you to guard and do. But do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. For they bind heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on men's shoulders, but with their finger they do not wish to move them. And they do all their works to be seen by men, and they make their tefillin wide and lengthen the zitziot of their garments. So just like in Yeshua's day, just like previously in history, it's the same today. You'll get people who will teach you the Torah, who will tell you, you've got to be righteous and you've got to do this, and, doing the Torah is really important. You should guard and do all that they say to do, but they say and do not do. So you can know where somebody's coming from again by what they actually do. But it's the same problem. People worship a God today that they learn about from people who tell them that they have got to be righteous, but they hear and they do not do it, like we see in the book of Ezekiel. Or here, they speak of being righteous, they speak of the importance of doing the Torah, but they say and do not do. So what is the implication of this behavior? The implication is that the God that they serve is actually okay with you waxing lyrical about how you have to be righteous and how you have to do the Torah and how important it is. But when it comes down to it, you're allowed to be as Edom, as the ones who fear and then do not do. Gods that are appeased. These were rife in the pagan world. Okay, bring an offering to the god of thunder, and then we won't have any thunder. Bring an offering to the god of the crops, and we'll have a good harvest that year. We can appease that God. When that God is angry with us, all we need to do is put the block into the right-shaped hole, and then that God is no longer angry anymore. This is the practice of bloodletting, and you'll see this sort of thing in the Catholic Church, where sin is not repented for and turned from. Sin is a continual practice in one's life, but what you need to do is some huge outward show, something that is really, really uncomfortable, something that is painful, something that you really, really don't want to do. And if you do that thing, then you appease God, rather than it being a change in your life. Okay, so these people are all cutting themselves, they're all shedding their blood, and this is a big festival. Micah 6:6-8 says, with what shall I come before Yehovah, bow myself before the high Elohim? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Is Yehovah pleased with thousands of rams or 10,000 rivers of oil? Is that what he wants? He wants all your stuff? No. And the problem with these people bringing these things, because Yehovah asks for these things as a show of obedience towards him, the problem with the people bringing these things is revealed by Micah now. He says, shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? So these people are trying to appease God. They're trying to bring these offerings as a way to appease him for the sin which is in their life, which is not what these things are for. He has declared to you, O man, what is good, and what does Yehovah require of you, but to do right, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your Elohim. That's all that he requires. He doesn't want to be appeased. He's not like all of these other gods throughout the rest of history. They all follow the same kind of formulaic format. Yehovah is set apart. He is different. He is holy from the entire world. What he wants of you is simply to do right, to love kindness, and to walk humbly before him, to humble yourself to him. That's where we get this lie. Jesus took my place. Okay? God is appeased. God was angry with me. I deserve to be punished. Jesus took the punishment that I was due. Doesn't make any sense anyway, because God has never said to anyone, I'm going to execute you on a cross for your sin. Jesus didn't take the punishment for our sin. For anyone wondering about that, you look on the channel for a video called The Atonement. I'll go into more detail, but this is the basis of it. This is the false God worship which is behind that. God can be appeased, and it's by the death of his son that an angry God is appeased, as opposed to Yehovah is forgiving. He will forgive my sin. I've got myself into a bad place where I'm under the power of death. I need ransoming from that place. But God is able to forgive, and he wants to forgive me. Instead, no, we've created an Elohim that needs appeasing. Gods that want religious rites rather than specific obedience. This is all kind of, it comes from this same spiritual place where people are in. Gods that want appeasement. Some of them want blood. Some of them want specific religious rites. But these religious rites take the form that we saw with Yehovah before, where men have decided what worship of God is going to look like. Maybe it's something that they really don't want to do, and that makes them feel even more like they're really giving something to God. The thing that they won't give to him, though, is their submission and their obedience. So they've created this fantastic religious system with priests who are not the sons of Aharon, doing religious rites on days that Yehovah has never asked for, like Yerovam. We'll get everyone to come up, and we'll have the communion wafer, and we'll do this, and we'll have the people, they'll come in and they'll burn the incense. You know, that'll be the incense burning bit, and then we'll do this, which is loosely based on what Yeshua asked us to do. And if we're doing this, you know, this is what we spend our Sundays doing, then this is us giving of ourselves to God. You know, we'll dress up in our holy garments like you see the priests doing in the Torah, and we'll make it all seem very much like something that God would like, but actually what it is what we would like, things that we have devised of our own hearts. Again, this doesn't look like a particularly wonderful thing to do. I don't think that I would like doing this, and this is part of what bolsters the lie. I really don't want to do this. This is really horrible. This is painful for me to do. This must be something that God wants me to do. And if I'm doing what God wants me to do through this massive show of religious fervor, then I can avoid what he's actually asked me to do, which is what I don't want to do. Whoever slaughters the bull slays a man. Whoever slaughters the lamb breaks a dog's neck. Whoever brings a grain offering, pig's blood. Whoever burns incense blesses an idol. Indeed, they've chosen their own ways. Their soul delights in their abominations. So they're coming with all the religious works. They're coming with all of the offerings, which may well have cost them, but they're offerings that they've decided to bring. So Yehovah says, if you're doing that, it's as if you've done abomination before me. Why? Because you've chosen to do it your own way. You've chosen the thing your soul delights in, not the thing which I've revealed that my soul delights in. Amos 5:21-27 says, I have despised your festivals, and I am not pleased with your assemblies. Though you offer me burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I do not accept them, nor do I look on your fattened peace offerings. People will often mix in with doing things the way that they've decided to do it, which avoids the thing that they're fearful of doing. Often mix in with that things that Yehovah has asked for. But Yehovah says, when you bring those things that I've asked for, because it is not obedience, because it is all mixed in with the things that your soul delights in, I do not accept even the things that I have asked you to do from you as offerings. Take away from me the noise of your songs, for I do not hear the sound of your stringed instruments. Let justice roll on like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. You brought me sacrifices and meal offerings in the wilderness for 40 years, O house of Israel. But you took up Succoth your king and Kiyun your idols, your astral gods, which you made for yourselves. So when you create these idols, when you put the stumbling block of your iniquity before your face, bringing the things that Yehovah has asked for along with them, he wants none of it. He does not accept it. You want to sing songs to Yehovah in that state? He thinks of it as you bringing the noise of your songs before him rather than what is pleasing, what is brought by those in obedience. Therefore, I have sent you into exile beyond Damascus, said Yehovah Elohim Zevaot, his name. Colossians 2:6-23 deals with this. Very pointedly deals with people bringing their own ideas about how to worship Yehovah rather than the simplicity which is in Mashiach, which is in his word. Therefore, as you accepted Messiah Yeshua the Master, walk in him. Charlie went through last week what it is to be in Christ or in Messiah. As you accepted him, walk in him. Okay, don't add any of your nonsense to it. Having been rooted and built up in him, established in the belief as you were taught, overflowing in it with thanksgiving. See to it that no one makes a prey of you through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the tradition of men, according to the elementary matters of the world, and not according to Messiah. So you add all of these things on to the worship of Messiah. You're doing exactly what we read of before in Deuteronomy 4:2. You're adding to the word. Because in him dwells all the completeness of divinity bodily. And you have been made complete in him, who is the head of all principality and authority. In him you were also circumcised with the circumcision not made with hands, in the putting off of the body of the sins of the flesh by the circumcision of Messiah. So just as you cut off the flesh of the foreskin, the circumcision that is not made with hands, the circumcision of the heart, is a putting off of the body, the old man, that body of sin. Having been buried with him in baptism, in which you were also raised with him through the belief in the working of Elohim, who raised him from the dead. And you being dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your flesh, he is made alive together with him, having forgiven you all trespasses, having blotted out the certificate of debt against us by the dogmas which stood against us. Again, these man-made traditions. And he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the cross. Having stripped the principalities and the authorities, he made a public display of them, having prevailed over them in it. Let no one therefore judge you in eating or in drinking or in respect of a festival or a new moon or a Chodesh or a Shabbat, weekly Shabbat, one of the high Shabbats. Men went around teaching them how they were to keep these things in a way which is not provided for in the word. So Paul says, let no one judge you. Don't worship Messiah according to the traditions of men, which are a shadow of what is to come, but the body of the Messiah. Okay, all of those things are the body of the Messiah. Let no one deprive you of the prize. Okay, if you're going to go after him, you're going to do it by those things in which your soul delights, those things which are of men, by creating images of this world, of the things of men and of the world. Let no one deprive you of the prize thereby, one who takes delight in false humility. Okay, going on your knees up the steps in the Vatican or whatever it is, putting the big poles through your face. It's false humility. That is not being humble to Yahovah. If you're humble to Yahovah, you do his word as he has asked you to do it. It's false humility, though, to make this big religious show and to make it all about something which it's not, something in which your soul delights. The worship of angels taking his stand on what he is not seen, puffed up by his fleshly mind. Okay, when we were going through following the Spirit, the fruits of the Spirit, we were looking at this. Okay, how people can deprive themselves of things and seem to themselves to be being spiritual, to be rather, though, doing false humility before God, and it comes from the mind of the flesh rather than following after the Spirit. Not holding fast to the head, from whom all the body, nourished and knit together by joints and ligaments, grows with the growth of Elohim. If then you died with Messiah from the elementary matters of the world, why, as though living in the world, do you subject yourself to regulations? Do not touch, do not taste, do not handle. Okay, what you need to do is you need to do this. You need to fast 3 times a year for 80 days. Whatever it might be. You might think, well, I'm depriving my flesh. But the scripture reveals it to us to be us being puffed up by the mind of the flesh rather than the mind of the Spirit, which are all to perish with use according to the commands and teachings of men. These indeed have an appearance of wisdom. Okay, they're seductive. They appeal to people. Like, oh yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, we worship Elohim in that way. Kind of means that we don't have to do this as well. That's cool. In self-imposed worship, okay, choosing how you will worship Elohim for yourself. Humiliation and harsh treatment of the body, of no value at all, only for the satisfaction of the flesh. And yet these people would think, I'm denying my flesh by doing these things. The scripture tells us that they're actually for the satisfaction of the flesh. People also worship gods that accept profane sacrifices. We saw when we looked at the matter of Baal Peor that the sacrifices that were offered were profane. Okay, they were not what Yahovah has asked for. Okay, Yahovah says, when you offer something to me, it has to be specific. You can offer an animal to me, but don't offer me a camel, because a camel is unclean. A camel is involved with the corruption which is in the world. I don't want that. Okay, and also, if you're going to make an offering to me, Don't make it out in the desert or wherever you dwell. I want you to come to Jerusalem, and I want you to offer your offerings there. Just like with Yerevan, maybe people think, I don't think going up to Jerusalem to make the offerings there is a good idea. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to offer something here. This camel cost me loads of money, so I'm going to offer this camel. It's going to be this great religious show to Yehovah. He's not interested in that. What he's interested in is your obedience. So ask yourself, okay, in your worship of Yehovah, I can show you all of these things, and it can be very easy for people to look at these things and think, that's terrible. I can't believe that people would worship Yehovah in such a way. I can't believe that they would offer him profane sacrifices. They're killing camels out in the desert. That's horrible. But ask yourself, the sacrifices that you give to Yehovah, are they exactly in accordance with what he said? Or have you come up with some way to accommodate in your mind what Yehovah has asked for and yet not give it to him? We've been through the spiritual sacrifices. Okay, think through the spiritual sacrifices and ask yourself, am I giving those sacrifices? Or have I done this? Have I started to go round Mount Seir? If you've started to go round Mount Seir, and whatever it is, stop yourself there. Confess your guilt before Yehovah. Bring your spiritual guilt offering. And he says, you've gone around this mountain long enough. Turn. This is the big one for people. Okay, and this is the one in which I'll look at the idea of smoking. Okay, people have always loved these gods that don't ask anything of them. We looked at the idea of karma. Okay, in whatever religion, the God or the spiritual authority may well ask for change, may well say, these things are good ways to live. Okay, but Yehovah is holy, and he's set apart from these gods, these traditions of men, these ideas of men. He's set apart from them in that Yehovah mandates change in his people. Not as works of the Torah, but because of the faith that they have in him. But the change is mandated. It's not an option. When we looked at karma, okay, karma will bring about on you change. That's the idea behind it. But you don't have to change yourself. And in fact, if you don't change yourself, all the more you're going to end up in the place where you have been changed. Which brings us to the idea of your worldly Christian. Okay, it brings us to the idea of this, of smoking. So as I mentioned at the beginning, people have contacted us to say, how can you speak against smoking? Smoking is not a problem. The scriptures never say anything about smoking. They never say anything about this. They never say anything about that. But we've got to be careful. We're not to add to the word of Elohim. So we're not to add sin that the Bible does not declare to be sin. But anybody with discernment would know that things such as smoking, things which damage the body, are against the scriptures. Okay, so just so that everybody is clear before we begin, these are the lungs of a smoker who has smoked for 30 years. Okay, it's pretty horrific what smoking does to the body. We know that it can cause cancer and it can cause all sorts of things, but the mechanistic action of smoking on the body is to destroy the body. Leviticus 19 verse 2 is a good place for us to start when we're considering this. Yehovah says, speak to all the congregation of the children of Yisrael and say to them, be set apart, for I, Yehovah, your Elohim, am set apart. And the context of this statement is being different from the nations, being different from the Gentiles who are all around us, and the practices of the Gentiles. The majority of what has gone up to this point has been forbidding sexual sin, making it so that Israel are holy and they're set apart from the Gentiles. And one thing that we're going to see is that sexual sin is sin which is against the body. But we're not to be as the Gentiles, we're to be set apart, and we'll see how that is to manifest. 1 John 3:4 may well be the first port of call for anybody who says smoking is not sin. Everyone doing sins transgresses the Torah. Sin is the transgression of the Torah. But people act like this is the only definition of sin in the scriptures. If it's not transgressing the Torah, then it's not sin. Has an element of truth. If it is transgressing the Torah, it is sin. That's all that this statement says. Other things that we should bear in mind. To him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. Okay? And doing good is not only what is in the Torah. If you read what is good in the scriptures, it extends beyond what the Torah commands. Romans 14 verse 23 says, "But he who doubts, if he eats, is condemned, because it is not of belief, and all that is not of belief is sin." So, I don't think that there's anybody out there who is smoking cigarettes who thinks, this is good, this is what I should be doing, who does not have doubt in their mind that it is a bad thing that they shouldn't be doing. So if even in their minds they are doing what they declare to not be good, if they're doing it doubting, then it is sin to them. But as we'll see, it's actually literally sin. It is that which is against the word of Elohim anyway. 1 Corinthians 6:12-15 says, "All is permitted me, but not all do profit. All is permitted me, but I shall not be under the power of any." Okay, so what he's talking about in context throughout the book of Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, is about the Torah not forbidding certain practices, but about it not being good for us to do those things. So even if you wanted to say that it is not sin, it is not forbidden by the scriptures, it is permitted by the scriptures, even amongst that which is permitted, not all profits. And he says, "I shall not be under the power of any." And this is actually the crux of what makes smoking sin, to be under the power of any addiction. Okay, people have asked specifically about smoking because we've spoken of it before, but any addiction is to be under the power of something else. It could be smoking, it could be drinking, it could be taking heroin. Whatever it is, you're under the power of something else. And that, as I say, is what we will see is the crux of the matter. Foods for the stomach and the stomachs for foods, but Elohim shall destroy both it and them. And the body is not for fornication, but for the master, and the master for the body. So Paul starts to bring in here the use that we put our body to. Elohim, who raised up the master, shall also raise us up through his power. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Messiah? Shall I then take the members of Messiah and make them members of a whore? Let it not be. So what you do with your body is no longer under your control. You've been bought with a price. You're to esteem Elohim with your body. Do you then take your body and use it for a purpose and then make that the member of Messiah? We've seen the damage that it does to the body. Or do you not know that he who is joined to a whore is one body? For he says, the two shall become one flesh. So if you're taking your body and you are defiling it in such a way, you're making that part of the body of Messiah. He who is joined to the master is one spirit. Flee fornication. Every sin that a man does is outside the body, But he who commits fornication sins against his own body. It's the same with smoking. It is sin which is against one's own body, which one has then made one with the body of Messiah. Or do you not know that your body is the dwelling place of the set-apart Spirit who is in you, which you have from Elohim, and you are not your own? Okay, so you don't want to defile the temple spiritually. You also don't want to sin against your own body. You are not your own. Okay, you have been bought with a price. So is it then permissible to go out and to take that body which Elohim has purchased for himself as part of the body of Messiah and to defile it and to kill it with smoking? You were bought with a price, therefore esteem Elohim in your body and in your spirit, which are of Elohim. Your body and your spirit. You are to esteem Elohim in your body. Romans 12, 1-2 says, I call upon you, therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim, your reasonable worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you prove what is that good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of Elohim. So we are to esteem Elohim in our bodies and to present them as a living offering to him. 2 Peter 2, 18-19. For speaking arrogant nonsense, they entice through the lusts of the flesh, through indecencies, the ones who have indeed escaped from those living in delusion, promising them freedom, though themselves being slaves of corruption. For one is a slave to whatever overcomes him. Okay, and again, this is part of what is the crux of the matter, being under the power of another, being a slave to another. And you will get people who will tell you it's okay to smoke. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's not forbidden in the word of Elohim. Don't worry about it. Well, remember, you're a slave to whatever overcomes you. Romans 6, 16-21 says, do you not know that to whom you present yourselves slaves for obedience, you are slaves of the one whom you obey, whether of sin to death or of obedience to righteousness? You're either the slave of sin or the slave of obedience. Okay, but whatever overcomes you, that you are slaves to as well. So if you are addicted to something, you can well phrase it as you are a slave to smoking. You're a slave to drinking. You're a slave to pornography. You're a slave to heroin, whatever it is. Of course, these things are forbidden by the word of Elohim. But thanks to Elohim that you were slaves of sin, yet you obeyed from the heart that form of teaching to which you were entrusted. Having been set free from sin, you became slaves of righteousness. I speak as a man because of the weakness of your flesh. For even as you did present your members as slaves of uncleanness and of lawlessness resulting in lawlessness, so now present your members as slaves of righteousness resulting in set apartness. You've been bought for a price. You are Yehovah's slave. Okay, you're not the slave of your addiction anymore. Nor do you have the power in yourself to give yourself to be the slave to that thing, because you are Yehovah's slave. For when you were slaves of sin, you were free from righteousness. What fruit thereof were you having then, over which you are now ashamed? For the end thereof is death. Smokers can ask themselves, okay, previously in your life, when you were a smoker, before you turned to Yehovah, what fruit thereof were you having then, over which you are now ashamed? The end thereof is death. Ezekiel 14, verse 3. Son of man, these men have set up idols in their hearts and have put the stumbling block of their iniquity before their face. Okay, this is why it is sin before Yehovah. We are not to have idols before Yahovah. Okay, we're not to have the stumbling block of our iniquity as an idol. We are not to be slaves to anything else. We are Yahovah's. He's bought and paid for us. We're not to make smoking an idol before Yahovah. We're not to serve that before Yahovah. And it's easy to think, okay, if somebody is addicted to heroin and they have a choice of going and doing an act of obedience to Yahovah, or it comes down to, will you do that thing? You haven't had a hit in a while. Maybe you need some heroin. What are you going to go out and do? Are you going to go and serve Yahovah? Or are you going to go and serve that to which you are a slave? So we're not to be slaves to anything else. And we are not to put these idols before our faces to be the things that we serve. Ephesians 4:17-24 says, "So this I say and witness in the Master, that you should no longer walk as the Gentiles walk, in the futility of their mind, having been darkened in their understanding, having been estranged from the life of Elohim because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the hardness of their heart, who having become callous have given themselves up to indecency, to work all uncleanness with greediness. But you have not so learned Messiah, if indeed you have heard him and were taught by him, and have become slaves of righteousness, slaves of Messiah, as truth is in Yeshua. That you put off with regard to your former way of life, the old man, being corrupted according to the desires of the deceit." All uncleanness comes from that proximity to the corruption which has entered into creation. Taking tar into your lungs and killing yourself is to partake in this. We are to put off the old man, corrupted according to the desires of the deceit, the desires of our flesh. To be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the new man, which was created according to Elohim in righteousness and set apartness of the truth. The reason that people have in their heads that it is okay to continue smoking, when obviously they know that it's not good, obviously they know that they're killing themselves, is the same reasoning that people have behind any of these changings of the word. They change the word in line with their own desires. There will come a time when they will not bear with the truth, with good doctrine. Or instead, they'll gather to themselves teachers who are tickling their ears. Okay, the exact same thing that we've been looking at for all of these idols. People have that stark choice. How can they be so deceived? The way that they are so deceived is they change Yahovah. They change the mirror so that the thing which they look upon is actually pleasing to Yahovah. Galatians 5:24 says, "Those who are of Messiah have crucified the flesh with its passions and its desires. The works of the flesh are well known, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, indecency, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, quarrels, jealousies, fits of rage, selfish ambitions, dissensions, factions, envy, murders, drunkenness, wild parties, and the like." Do you think smoking would perhaps go in there? Or perhaps drinking to drunkenness? Or taking drugs? Any addiction, of which I forewarn you, even as I said before, those who practice such as these shall not inherit the kingdom of Elohim. So in order for people to believe that they're still following Yahovah, but they don't have to do that thing of which they are scared, they create this idol in their heads. 1 Corinthians 9:24-27 says, "Do you not know that those who run in a race indeed all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way as to obtain it. Everyone who competes controls himself in every way. Now they do it to receive a corruptible crown, but we for an incorruptible crown. Therefore I run accordingly, not with uncertainty and not with doubt. Thus I fight, not as one who beats the air. I treat my body severely and make it my slave, lest when I have proclaimed to others, I myself might be rejected. This is something which is asked of us, okay, to subject the body to things that the body's not going to be immediately grateful of, but not in false humility, not by following the teachings of men, by following the word. To him then who knows to do the good, does not do it, to him it is sin. He who doubts, if he eats or if he partakes in whatever he's doubting over, is condemned, because it is not of belief, and all that is not of belief is sin. Don't allow this to be you. And it's amazing because I'm sat here in the hall talking to a load of people who don't smoke. But it's the same thing. Just as I was saying these things when I was sat here in a hall full of people who were waiting for the break so they could go out and have a ciggy. These things are said not necessarily for the benefit of the people who are here, but these issues present themselves because they're problems wider in the body of Messiah. And it was amazing following all of those teachings on smoking. I got about 4 or 5 emails, people who were saying that they had either given up smoking or that they'd given up heroin as a result of this. But to those people to whom this is relevant, and to anyone here, if you've got anything in your life that you're kind of kidding yourself that, oh, if I just change it, I'm still following the word, don't allow this to be you, okay? We can see you. You know exactly what's going on. Okay, people in this position, their folly becomes obvious to all. Don't allow smoking, and I'll direct this towards the camera, to be an idol in your life. If you've created a little space wherein you can go off and have your sly little cigarettes and think, oh, I'm going to make this all about Yehovah, turn and repent. You've gone around that mountain long enough. Turn. Becomes the same thing. These people were doing the same thing, weren't they? Okay, we've got this idol that we want to worship. How can we make it so that we can have a party? I know, tomorrow is a festival to Yehovah. That sounds like a brilliant idea. And I went through this in the time when we had people here who were smoking rather. This is an example of how people put these idols into their lives and fool themselves that actually they're worshipping Yehovah. 6 o'clock, get up. 6 to 6:05, have a morning cigarette while thinking about Yehovah. 6:05 to 7 o'clock, almost an hour we spend in prayer. 7 to 8:30, read scripture. We've really given it our all. We've done all the things that Yehovah is asking for, surely here. Almost an hour in prayer, an hour and a half reading scripture. 8:30 to 9 o'clock, travel to work. 9 to 11, do some work. Then at 11 to 11:15, it's your break. What do you do on your break, though? Obviously, you have a ciggy. You have a ciggy and pray to Yehovah. Because as long as you're praying to Yehovah, you guys are like that, aren't you? It's okay. You're doing the things that people of Yehovah do. 11:15 to 12:30, more work. 12:30 to 1:30, lunch break, half eating, half praying, and reading the Bible. So holy, so virtuous. 1:30 to 3 o'clock, more work. Then 3 to 3:15, you have a break, and of course you have a cigarette. More prayer. 3:15 to 5 o'clock, more work. 5 to 5:30, you travel home. When you're at home, you prepare dinner. Then you eat your dinner. Then have a quick cigarette and more prayer. How into Yehovah is this person? They love Yehovah. And it doesn't have to be smoking cigarettes. Could be anything. Any little thing which is an addiction in your life, which is something which you think you can accommodate by having these great shows of religious fervor. 10 to 7 to 9 o'clock, family activities, which are, of course, scripture readings and Torah-based games because we're so holy. 9 o'clock, go to bed. Next day, the cycle repeats. And this is how sin is deceptive and can hide behind these acts of piety and these acts of religious fervor. When you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I'm unable to drive them out. And you say in your heart, smoking's just got a complete grip of me. There's no way that I could ever stop smoking. I am unable to stop. Do not be afraid of them. Remember well what Yehovah your Elohim did to Pharaoh and to all Mitzrayim. The great trials which your eyes saw and the signs and wonders, the strong hand and the outstretched arm by which Yehovah your Elohim brought you out of the world. Yehovah your Elohim does so to all of the enemies which you need to overcome, which you have been afraid. The matter is very simple. Do you trust him? See to it that no one falls short of the favor of Elohim, that no root of bitterness springing up causes trouble by which many become defiled. Lest there be any fornicator or profane one like Asaph, who for a single meal sold his birthright. For you know that afterward, when he wished to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place for repentance, though he sought it with tears. This is a common thing. I'll get emails from people saying, I've got this sin as part of my life, pornography or whatever addiction, and it really troubles me, it grieves me, it distresses me, I'm in tears about it all the time. I just can't stop doing it. This is not acceptable. Again, just like works of piety and religious fervor, people think the fact that I'm so upset about it and I'm crying about it, that means that actually I really am one of Yehovah's people, because otherwise I wouldn't be so upset about it. If you don't find a place for repentance, you don't turn, then Yehovah is not interested in how you dress it up. You've gone around that mountain long enough, turn. You search the scriptures because you think you possess everlasting life in them. These are the ones that bear witness of me. And Yeshua is going to speak to all of those people that we've been looking at. But you do not desire to come to me to possess life. You search the scriptures, you read all about me, you do all the things that I've asked you to do, apart from that thing which you're scared to let go of. You don't desire to come to me to possess life. It's quite a poignant thing. I think that's one of my favorite things that Yeshua says in all of Scripture, because it cuts right to the heart of the matter to all these people. You make all of your show about studying who Yehovah is and about being all about the Torah and all of that, but you don't desire to come to him. Gone around that mountain long enough, turn. Okay, so I split verse 9, as I mentioned before, because this is the beginning of the third word. It says, For I, Yehovah your Elohim, am a jealous ale, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing kindness to thousands to those who love me and cherish my commands. So that's his name. That's what he himself reveals his name to be in Exodus 34. You do not take the name of Yehovah your Elohim in vain, for Yehovah does not leave him unpunished who takes his name in vain. Okay, and there's many ways that you can understand that idea of taking his name in vain. And something that comes across when you consider that he's talking about, I punish those people if they hate me and they're disobedient, but I'm good to people who love me and cherish my commands. So to take his name in vain can be seen to be, when he says, punish those, do good to those, to just count that as nothing almost, and to just be like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And the fact that he does that, kind of like it's a nothing to me. Well, this is the word we've mentioned it a couple of times recently. It's nasa, to take. When we looked at the to room something, to lift it up, to exalt it. The other word, which is often translated as to lift something up, is to nasa it. It can also be to accept it, to lift it up in acceptance, to bear it up, to carry it, or you can phrase that as to take something. To lift it up and to carry it is to take it. You take it off. Okay, this word shav is the word vain. Okay, translated as vain. It's emptiness, vanity, falsehood, emptiness, nothingness, vanity, worthlessness of conduct. So in this kind of idea of I punish these people, but I do good to these people, don't take that, carry it, bear it up as nothing, as meaning nothing, essentially, or as worthlessness. How this should actually be translated is a matter of debate, but we can kind of see what's being said. Take his name seriously. Okay, this is Gesenius's. He says here, falsehood, a lie, as on the other hand, denotes what is true. Okay, so don't take his name to be a lie. There's nothing as being worthless. So you do not carry the name of Yehovah your Elohim to worthlessness, because it's leshav, which means to or from worthlessness. For Yehovah does not leave him unpunished who carries his name to worthlessness. However, that should be translated, we can get its meaning. Cherish the Sabbath day to set it apart as Yehovah your Elohim commanded you. 6 days you labor and have done all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yehovah your Elohim. You do not do any work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your ox, nor your donkey, nor any of your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates, so that your male servant, your female servant rest as you do. And you have remembered that you were a slave in the land of Mitzrayim, and that Yehovah your Elohim brought you out from there by a strong hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore Yehovah your Elohim commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. And I'd recommend that people watch Va'et Chanan from last year, the Torah portion that Charlie did, and the Torah portion after it, which is a kev, because we both looked at this issue of the Sabbath day, kind of one being on the heels of the other, which is actually what a kev means. But this is a sign between Yehovah and his people. The fifth commandment is to respect your father and your mother. It's to kavod them. It's to give them weight, not to lightly esteem them, but to give them weight and esteem, to respect them. Your father and mother, as Yehovah your Elohim has commanded you, so that your days are prolonged and so that it is well with you on the soil which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you. So those first 5 commands can all be seen, and we'll look at this in a second, as ways to love Yehovah. The next 5 can be seen as ways to love your neighbor, but it's perhaps not a distinction which is an absolute distinction, but we'll get to that. When Paul writes of that command, he says, respect your father and mother, which is the first charge with promise, in order that it might be well with you and you might live long on the earth. See, sometimes we can be quick to read over those sort of things. Paul particularly highlights this, and he says, no, look, there's a promise that's attached to this charge which Yehovah gives you. He promises that if you do this and you respect, you give weight to, and you esteem your father and mother, that it will be well with you and you'll live long on the earth. Colossians 3:20-21, Paul writes, children, obey your parents in all, for this is well-pleasing to the master. Okay, so this is what's required of children, but he also says, fathers, do not vex your children lest they become discouraged. So this is a two-sided thing. Not that you can look to one and say, well, they're not doing that, so I'm not going to do my part, but it's a symbiotic relationship. You do not murder, you do not commit adultery, you do not steal, you do not bear false witness against your neighbor. You do not covet your neighbor's wife, you do not desire your neighbor's house, his field, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, his ox, nor his donkey, or whatever belongs to your neighbor. In Matthew 22:34-40, Yeshua tells us about all of the commands, all of the Torah hanging on two principles. He says, but the Pharisees, having heard that he'd silenced the Sadducees, were gathered together. One of them, one learned in the Torah, to question him, trying him, saying, Teacher, which is the great command in the Torah? Which is the most important command in the Torah? Yeshua said to him, you shall love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and the most important command. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commands hang all the Torah and the prophets. Okay, so is Yeshua saying that all of the Torah will hang on one or the other of the commands? Or is he saying that all of the Torah hangs on both of those commands? Well, he's saying that all of the Torah hangs on both of those commands because those commands are actually inextricable one from another. 1 John 4:8 tells us, the one who does not love does not know Elohim, for Elohim is love. And all of the commandments tell us to love. All of the commandments tell us how to love Elohim. All of the commandments tell us how to love our neighbor as ourselves. Okay, so if we compare those two groups of 5 commandments, okay, I am Yehovah, that's kind of paired with you shall not murder. People see this side as things that pertain to your neighbor, this side as things that pertain to Yehovah. So I am Yehovah your Elohim. Make me your Elohim. Paired with don't murder. Why would this be? How are they similar? How is one telling us what to do to Elohim and one to our neighbor? Well, if you're murdering somebody, it's because you want to get them out of the way. Okay, there's some kind of inconvenience to you. They've angered you. And you want to remove that person from reality. It's the same with Yehovah. What do people do when Yehovah is an inconvenience to them? They make it so that he is not their Elohim. Either they form an idol in his place and call that Yehovah, or whatever the case is. They don't make Yehovah their Elohim. Don't have any other gods before me. Okay, and this is paired quite easily, understandably, with don't commit adultery. Okay, if you have other gods before Yehovah, he directly says in Scripture that that is committing adultery against him. Don't take his name in vain. Okay, that is paired with do not steal. What is it to take his name? It is to take up, to bear away, to carry away. Don't take it in vain. Paired with don't steal. You're stealing Yehovah's name. The Sabbath day. Okay, the Sabbath day is paired with don't bear false witness. So how is that similar? Well, the Sabbath day is a sign between you and Yehovah. So if you break the Sabbath day, it's to be a witness between the two parties. If you break the Sabbath day, it is bearing false witness of Yehovah before others. But it's bearing false witness. So you can do it to your neighbor. You can also do it to Yehovah by breaking the Sabbath day. I'd also suggest that not becoming circumcised and not circumcising your children is another way of bearing false witness of Yehovah. Then we've got to respect your parents. And that's paired with don't covet. So what's going on there? What is the relationship between that? How is respect your parents loving Yehovah for a start? Well, your parents are things which are out of your control. You are given your parents essentially by Yehovah. You can't change who your parents are. Okay, so you are to respect your parents, not desire it to be any other way, which is what is at the heart of coveting. You look at something that someone else has got and you say, that should not be the way that things are. That thing should be mine. My circumstances should be different. Okay? The way that things are in the world is ordered by Yehovah. He makes rich and he makes poor. You don't covet what somebody else has got and want that for yourself. And the same is true of your parents. You don't desire for that to be different and seek for that to be different. So one is to love Yehovah, it can be seen, and one is to love yourself. Love your neighbor. Thou shalt love thyself. But another truth is seen in what Yeshua says when he says all of these hang on both of the commandments together. So although you can see in the commandments, one is more geared towards loving your neighbor and one is more geared towards loving Elohim, all of them actually tell us how to do both of those things. Paul actually says that the entire Torah is fulfilled in one word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And obviously people misunderstand this and think, well, if I'm loving my neighbor as myself, I don't need to do the rest of the Torah. Paul's saying the same thing that Yeshua is saying. All of the Torah hangs on those two commandments. All of the Torah tells you how to love your neighbor as yourself. It also tells you how to love Elohim. So how is it that all of the Torah, all of those things which are telling you how to love Elohim, perhaps more primarily, how are they telling you how to love your neighbor? 1 John 5 verse 2 says, by this we know that we love the children of Elohim. We love our neighbor when we love Elohim and cherish his commands. So loving Elohim and cherishing his commands is loving our neighbor, which is what Yeshua was saying, and is exactly the same as what Paul was saying also. Deuteronomy 5:22 says, these words Yehovah spoke to all your assembly in the mountain from the midst of the fire of the cloud and of the thick darkness with a loud voice, and he added no more. He wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. And it came to be, when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness, while the mountain was burning with fire, that you came near to me, all the heads of your tribes and your elders. And see, Yehovah our Elohim has shown us his esteem and his greatness. And we have heard his voice from the midst of the fire. Today we have seen that Elohim speaks with man and has lived. And now, why should we die? For this great fire is consuming us. If we hear the voice of Yehovah our Elohim anymore, then we shall die. For who is there of all flesh who has heard the voice of the living Elohim speaking from the midst of the fire as we have and does live? You go near and hear all that Yehovah our Elohim says, and speak to us all that Yehovah our Elohim says to you, and we shall obey and do it. And Yehovah heard the voice of your words which you spoke to me, and Yehovah said to me, I have heard the voice of the words of the people which they have spoken to you. They have done well in all that they've spoken. Oh, that they had such a heart in them to fear me and to cherish all my commands always, so that it might be well with them and with their children forever. In other words, this is just lip service. Sounds great. Oh, that their heart was such before me. Exactly the same. Oh, if my people had listened to me, Israel would walk in my ways. I would subdue their enemies at once and turn my hand against their adversaries. Bearing in mind our adversaries that we are to overcome. If only they'd shema. Those who hate Yehovah feign obedience to them, and their time will be forever. This is exactly what the people are doing in this moment when Yehovah is saying, oh, if this heart was actually in them. We will do, you go and speak to Yehovah, it's a bit scary. You go and speak to him and come back and tell us what to do, and we will obey him. Those who hate him feign obedience to him, and their time would be forever. He would feed them with the finest of wheat and with honey from the rock, I would satisfy you. Exactly what Moshe is promising to the people in this parsha. Go say to them, return to your tents. But you stand here by me and let me speak to you all the commands and the laws and the justices which you teach them. And they have done them in the land which I am giving them to possess. And you have cherished to do as Yehovah your Elohim has commanded you. Do not turn aside to the right or to the left. Walk in all the way which Yehovah your Elohim has commanded you, so that you may live and it may be well with you. And you have prolonged your days in the land which you possess. This is the command, the laws, the justices which Yehovah your Elohim has commanded to teach you to do in the land which you are passing over to possess, so that you fear Yehovah your Elohim, cherish all his laws and his commands which I command you today, you and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life, that your days be prolonged. And you have heard, O Yisrael, and have cherished to do, that it might be well with you, that you increased greatly as Yehovah Elohim of your fathers has spoken to you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Yisrael, Yehovah our Elohim, Yehovah is one. And you have loved Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Okay, so if you shema Yehovah's words, you trust and obey them, you hear them and obey them, then you will fear Yehovah, you will cherish all of his laws. It might not make sense to you at first, but you shema them, you fear him, and you cherish them. You have heard, O Yisrael, and cherished to do, that it might be well with you. Then again, in the present tense, Shema, O Yisrael, Yehovah our Elohim, Yehovah is one, and you have loved Yehovah. That's just the simple thing that we were reading. Yeshua says this is the parable to explain all parables. The good seed, they hear the word and they accept it. Shema, O Yisrael, and you have loved Yehovah your Elohim. You have feared Yehovah your Elohim. You have cherished his commands. The key is to be that seed sown on good soil which accepts the word. These words which I'm commanding you today have been in your heart if you shema. And you have impressed them upon your children and have spoken of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, and when you lie down and when you rise up, and have bound them as a sign on your hand, and they have been as frontlets between your eyes. And you have written them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. You want to be in this group? This is how you do it. Shema, O Yisrael. And it has been when Yehovah your Elohim brings you into the land of which he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, to give you great and good cities which you did not build, and houses filled with all kinds of goods that you did not fill, wells dug which you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees which you did not plant, and you have eaten and been satisfied. Be on guard lest you forget Yehovah, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, from the house of bondage. Fear Yehovah your Elohim and serve him and swear by his name. Again, to the people future, because this is exactly what they did. They went into the land. They were good under Joshua. They took control of the land, and then it all fell apart. Do not go after other gods, the gods of the people who are all around you. For Yehovah your Elohim is a jealous ale in your midst, lest the displeasure of Yehovah your Elohim burn against you. Then he has destroyed you from the face of the earth. Do not try Yehovah your Elohim as you tried him in Massah. Greatly cherish the commands of Yehovah your Elohim and his witnesses and his laws which he commanded you. And you have done what is right and good in the eyes of Yehovah. Again, the instruction, present tense. Do not try Yehovah your Elohim. Greatly cherish his commands. Then, what's the outcome? You have done what is right and good in the eyes of Yehovah, that it might be well with you, and you've gone and possessed gone in and possessed the good land of which Yehovah swore to your fathers, to drive out all your enemies from before you, as Yehovah has spoken. All those things, Hasatan, the desires of your flesh. Cherish his commands, do not try him, and you have done all those things. You have been an overcomer. When your son asks you in time to come, saying, what is the meaning of the witnesses and the laws and the justices which Yahovah our Elohim has commanded you, then you have said to your son, we were slaves of Pharaoh in Mitzrayim, and Yahovah brought us out of Mitzrayim with a strong hand. Yahovah sent signs and wonders great and grievous upon Mitzrayim, upon Pharaoh and upon all his household before our eyes. And he brought us out from there to bring us in, to give us the land of which he swore to our fathers. And Yahovah commanded us to do all these laws, to fear Yahovah our Elohim for our good always, to keep us alive as it is today. And it is righteousness for us when we cherish to do all this command before Yahovah our Elohim as he commanded us. The last 11 verses say, when Yahovah your Elohim brings you into the land which you go to possess, he has also cleared away many nations before you, the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. When Yahovah your Elohim gives them over to you, you have smitten them, put them under the ban completely, make no covenant with them, show them no favor. The same is true of anything that you have to come. Make no agreement with it. Make no kind of halfway agreement, covenant with that thing. Do not tolerate it, or else it will ensnare you and lead you away from Yahovah. Do not intermarry with them. You do not give your daughter to his son. You do not take his daughter for your son. For he turned your sons away from following me. They have served other gods. Then the displeasure of Yahovah has burned against you and promptly destroyed you. But this is what you do to them. You break down their altars, smash their pillars, cut down their asherim, burn their carved images with fire, all those false idols, all of what we looked at in the third part. For you are a set-apart people to Yahovah your Elohim. Yahovah has chosen you to be a people for himself, a treasured possession above all the peoples on the face of the earth. Yahovah did not set his love on you, nor choose you because you were more numerous than any other people, for you were least of the peoples. And I think I've mentioned before that this always used to confuse me, that he was saying this to these people who were going into the land, that Yahovah had loved them and had chosen them. But because of Yahovah loving you and because of him guarding the oath which he swore to your fathers, Yahovah has brought you out with a strong hand and redeemed you from the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim. Again, it was confusing because I'm thinking, well, why is he loving these people who are going to go on to be these people who were in disobedience to him, who turned from him and hated him? How could he say this to them? But of course, when we see that this is promises to us and to people yet future, to people who have done these things, the ones who did Shema, these are the people that Yahovah is speaking to. Okay, he didn't choose them because they were more numerous than any other people. They were the least of the people. Few there are that finds the way that leads to life. You have known that Yahovah your Elohim, he is Elohim, the trustworthy Eo, God in covenant and kindness for 1,000 generations with those who love him and those who cherish his commands. These are the people who are spoken of in these verses. But repaying those who hate him to their face, to destroy them, he does not delay to do so. With him who hates him, he repays him to his face, and that is his name. And you have cherished the command and the laws and the justices. I command you today to do them. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the clear choice that you set before us. And thank you that it's not grievous or burdensome to choose you. Thank you that you've made these things clear to us, that you've explained your Torah. I ask that you would guard us from the evil one. Do not lead us into temptation. Do not allow us to be led astray. Don't allow us to be deceived. Help us to focus on you. I ask, Father, that you'd bring the trials that are necessary for us to prove our faith to you, and that you would strengthen us and embolden us by your Spirit so that we can pass the tests that you lay before us. Thank you for being our Father. Thank you.